Chapter 22:14. The sword spirit was 2 feet tall, like a red-haired teenager. Its aura was far more frightening than the Emperor realm vile souls. Lin Sun felt a piercing sense of danger from it. Do you know the origin of this sword case? Lin Sun didn't rush to attack. The red-haired teenager said coldly, I saw this sword case when the first Oblivion tribulation broke out. Its owner was Taishian, the first sword emperor in primitive times. Hearing this, Lin Sun was shocked. Taishian sword emperor? Lin Sun couldn't help but think of a majestic, dazzling, godlike figure, with hundreds of millions of auspicious lights behind him, standing there like the ruler of all ages, with the momentum to control the whole world. Lin Sun had obtained the Taishian sword scripture left by Taishian sword emperor in the perilous domain. Until now, Lin Sun still remembered what the Taishian sword emperor had said. Throughout the ages we shoulder the great Tao with our iron shoulders. The domain of the apex is only the starting point for all of you. I hope that in the future, all of you will be able to ascend to the pinnacle of the holy path and soar upwards. You will establish your hearts for the heavens and earth, establish your lives for all living beings, inherit the lost arts for the sages, and establish peace for all ages. Lin Sun was still impressed by that kind of bearing and broad-mindedness. Later, Lin Sun learned that Taishian sword emperor and battle emperor Weiyang were both figures of primitive times, like immortal legends. But Lin Sun still didn't expect that the sword case obtained from Taoist Crocodile's treasure house in Cold Sky Domain was a treasure left by Taishian sword emperor. Taishian sword emperor once walked in the dark world? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. The red-haired teenager frowned, as if he didn't expect Lin Sun to ask so many questions. But in the end, he still said stiffly, in primitive times, Taishian sword emperor and a group of people came here. Because they were worried that the step of oblivion would destroy the origin of this world, they took away the origin of natural way that originally belonged to this world. After a pause, the red-haired teenager stared at the sword case on Lin Sun's back and said, But I didn't expect that Taishian sword emperor's rebirth sword case would be left here. Hearing this, Lin Sun finally knew the name of the sword case on his back. Rebirth. It was a name that was full of mystery. What about you? Who are you? Why do you recognize this sword case? Lin Sun asked. The crimson-haired youth had a ruthless look in his eyes. You ask too many questions. I only want that sword box. As long as you hand it over, I can leave immediately. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. What if I don't give it to you? Die. The crimson-haired youth spat out a single word. He made his move without hesitation. His 2-foot-long figure turned into a broken sword stained with blood. The sword was covered with a strange curse and resentment. Whoosh! The broken sword slashed out and the world was dyed scarlet. The fierce and tyrannical sword intent shot into the 9 heavens. The power of this sword was obviously completely different from before. As soon as Lin Sun thought of it, countless bright Taishian sword chi emerged from the acupoints all over his body like tides and swept across the sky. The sword energy filled the world, filled the mountains and rivers, and filled the void. It was everywhere. Therefore, there was nothing he couldn't do. Vaguely, the countless sword energies turned into layers of sword formations, covering the sky and deducing the endless and all-encompassing mysteries of swordsmanship. This was the first time that Lin Sun had deduced the mysteries of swordsmanship in Taishian sword scripture he had mastered in a complete and extreme form. The blood-red broken sword suddenly trembled and stopped in the air. At the same time, the voice of the crimson-haired youth sounded. Starting from one and ending in infinity, all things are born from swords, all spirits are transformed into swords, and the swordsmanship is infinite and random. The true meaning of performing swordsmanship is as numerous as the sands of the universe. His voice was in a trance like a murmur. This swordsmanship can kill ghosts and gods, break yin and yang, destroy the 5 elements, open the sky and cross the ages. This swordsmanship is called Tai Xian. Lin Sun's eyes were filled with surprise. This was originally his test. Now it seemed that the spirit of the broken sword had an unusual relationship with Tai Xian, Sword Emperor. I remember now, the blood-red broken sword turned back into the crimson-haired youth. The violence in his eyes had disappeared. He stared at the sword sheath on Lin Sun's back and seemed extremely excited. He shouted almost hysterically, It's mine." His voice shook the world. Lin Sun was stunned. This crimson-haired youth was originally the sword spirit of the reincarnation sword sheath? So, wasn't he the sword spirit of Tai Xian, Sword Emperor? At this moment, the crimson-haired youth suddenly held his head and screamed. His face was distorted, and a layer of dense curse and resentment emerged on his skin. It was as dark as ink and extremely strange. "Quick, let me go back! Go back!" The crimson-haired youth stared at Lin Sun, and his voice was filled with pain and anxiety. It seemed that his reason would be destroyed in the next moment, and he would completely fall into a state of boundless violence. Lin Sun took a deep breath, took down the reincarnation sword sheath, and opened it gently. Swish! Almost immediately, the crimson-haired youth turned into a light and swept into the sword sheath. "Thank you." After a long time, the crimson-haired youth's weak voice sounded from the depths of the sword sheath, and then fell into silence. "Yi!" Lin Sun couldn't help but call out with his divine sense. There was a sword world within the sword sheath, and only artifact spirits could enter it. Presently, Yi was recuperating within it. "Lin Sun, I saw him. A grand Tao law related to curses has been planted in his body, and it's extremely strange and terrifying." Ye's calm and soothing voice resounded. "But don't worry, the sword world can suppress the strength in his body." Lin Sun heaved a sigh of relief and said, "His master has passed on the Tao to me, so I'll trouble you to help me look after him this time." "All right." Yi agreed readily. Only now did Lin Sun close the sword sheath and carry it on his back once more. As he gazed at this gloomy and bloody world, a question couldn't help but surge into his heart. During the primeval times, exactly how many of those great figures that suffered misfortune during the first tribulation of oblivion were buried in this purgatory of darkness? The Tai Xian Sword Emperor possessed the title of the number 1 Sword Emperor in the primeval times, and he was extremely supreme and supreme. Yet his sword sheath was lost in the world of darkness during the first tribulation of oblivion, and his sword spirit was buried beneath this purgatory of darkness as well. It was obvious from this how terrifying the first tribulation of oblivion was. Besides that, the ancient copper tree formed from the root of the Kunwu divine tree and the incomplete heavenless spear of the great Tao were suppressed within this purgatory of darkness as well. Every single one of them had extremely shocking origins, and the more one thought about it in detail, the more one deeply realized how extraordinary the first tribulation of oblivion was. Perhaps second senior brother knows the answer to all of this? Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. The purgatory of darkness was situated in the ancestral grounds of the Misty House, whereas the Misty House belonged to the Copper Sparrow Pavilion that was controlled by second senior brother Zhongqiu. Moreover, second senior brother had once entered the purgatory of darkness and fought his way to the 9th level of the purgatory of darkness a very long time ago, so he surely knew a great deal of the truth related to the first tribulation of oblivion. Lin Sun decided that if he met second senior brother in the future, then he would surely ask him about all of this. Not for anything else but for the sake of the artifact spirit and sword chest left behind by the profound Sword Emperor. That spirit of the broken sword that's coiled with a curse and resentment has actually sided with that fellow? The eyeballs of an Emperor realm vile soul that noticed this scene in the shadows almost fell out of their sockets. In the eyes of these vile souls that resided in the 6th level of the purgatory of darkness, the spirit of the broken sword was completely like an overlord, and it was boundlessly formidable and terrifying. In the countless years of the past, practically all those that offended the spirit of the broken sword were annihilated without the slightest chance of survival. If it wasn't for the spirit of the broken sword not taking the initiative to cause trouble, then all the vile souls in the 6th level would have probably been annihilated a long time ago. Yet now, such a terrifying existence had actually taken the initiative to side with Lin Sun, and this was undoubtedly too inconceivable. Have you seen enough? Lin Sun's figure flashed and appeared by the side of the vile soul that was hiding in the shadows. The vile soul's expression turned grim, and it was just about to flee when its path of retreat was cut off by a peerless strand of saber chi. The lawless saber. In just a few breaths, the vile soul was killed. Then, Lin Sun called back his 5 doppelgangers and flew into the distance. He planned to find a place to recover his strength. 10 minutes later, in a newly excavated underground cave, Lin Sun's original body sat cross-legged and cultivated, holding a piece of Great Way source crystal in each hand. Greenwood Taoist body was counting the spoils of war. In this battle, a total of 26 vile souls had been killed by Lin Sun, allowing him to collect a total of 34 primordial treasures. The quality of these treasures was extraordinary, not inferior to the quiet purple thunder bamboo staff that he had obtained from old bamboo, and some of them were even better. Unfortunately, these primordial treasures were far superior to ordinary emperor weapons, and were ultimately inferior to Kunlun's emperor weapons, so Lin Sun wasn't too interested in them. In the end, he decided to leave these treasures for Wu Kei and the spirit of the broken blade as food. In addition to these spoils of war, Lin Sun also obtained 26 pieces of Great Way source crystal, all of which were of excellent quality and contained different fragments of Emperor Dao laws. As long as he refined them, Lin Sun would immediately be able to control them. After sorting out the spoils of war, Lin Sun's Greenwood Taoist body took out the Great Way without ending tower and released the old copper tree that had been suppressed within it. The old copper tree was already on the verge of death, and Lin Sun didn't stand on ceremony, and directly began to ask about things related to Kunwu Divine Wood. The old copper tree didn't cooperate at first, but it couldn't withstand Lin Sun's torture. It didn't take long before it couldn't bear Lin Sun's torture, and told him a secret pattern. After the first oblivion calamity of the primordial world descended, Kunwu Divine Wood, which was originally born in the origin of chaos of the dark world, also suffered the same calamity. Its body was smashed, and its roots were broken. Even the soul origin root, which gathered its Tao origin, suffered great damage and was left in the depths of the dark purgatory. The old copper tree was transformed from a section of the Kunwu Divine Wood's root, and after countless years of changes, it finally condensed some spiritual wisdom. Strictly speaking, the old copper tree could only be regarded as transformed from a wisp of the Kunwu Divine Wood's origin power, and was far from being comparable to the real Kunwu Divine Wood. He also only knew that the soul origin root left by Kunwu Divine Wood was in one of the layers under the dark purgatory. As for which layer it was, the old copper tree couldn't say why. But for Lin Sun, it was enough to confirm that the soul origin root of Kunwu Divine Wood was in this dark purgatory. P.S. The 4th update is here, the 5th update is before 11:30 p.m. Chapter 22:15. After getting the answer he wanted, Lin Sun's wood Taoist body suppressed the old copper tree into the Tower of Endless Tao again. When looking for the spiritual root of Kunwu Divine Wood, the old copper tree could still play some role, so it was not the time to kill it. Not far away, Lin Sun was meditating quietly. The battle and slaughter he'd released to his limits earlier had allowed his cultivation in the martial Tao to obtain a rare form of tempering, and even his grasp of the laws of the Grand Tao had become even more refined and skilled. Lin Sun had a hunch that if he could fight all the way to the 9th level of Purgatory of Darkness, his martial cultivation and the power of the Great Way were likely to reach the extreme. At that time, perhaps it was time to prepare for the Emperor Realm. One day later, Lin Sun got up from meditation and left the underground cave. The bloody world was still as gloomy and oppressive as before, and the wind was howling. Lin Sun walked alone between heaven and earth and soon found his opponent. A skinny old man in a bloody robe, with a broken body, was hiding under a mountain, devouring and absorbing the power of a group of fierce souls. Boom! Lin Sun stepped into the void, and the mountain collapsed with a gentle step. The eyes of the skinny old man, who was practicing under the mountain, flashed with terrible violence. Who? The skinny old man rushed out with anger. However, when he saw Lin Sun in the distance, he was stunned and almost scared out of his soul. Without hesitation, he began to run for his life. Lin Sun was stunned. When did the fierce soul with the power of the Emperor realm become so timid? While thinking, he had already caught up with him. Little thing, with your combat power you can go to the 7th level. Why do you stay on the 6th level? Seeing Lin Sun catch up, the skinny old man suddenly became anxious and roared. This made Lin Sun more and more surprised. When did the fierce soul become so kind that it began to remind him that it was time to leave? When Lin Sun was about to say something, he saw that the lean old man ran faster and faster, as if he was desperate. Soon, he disappeared without a trace. Lin Sun thought about it and finally gave up the idea of continuing to chase. The old guy was obviously scared out of his wits. Even if he caught up, he couldn't bring too many surprises in the battle. Next, Lin Sun set out on a journey to find his opponent again. But to his surprise, when he found a target in the following time, the latter ran away like a frightened rabbit, leaving no chance for Lin to make a move at all. This wasn't the only case. No matter how ferocious the auras of the opponents he encountered were, they would all flee for their lives the moment they encountered him. Run! That ferocious guy is coming out again. Damn it! Is he planning to kill all of us? Sob, sob, sob. It wasn't easy for me to condense my spiritual consciousness. I didn't expect to encounter such a ruthless fellow. How unfair the heavens are! We evil spirits have lost all face. Run! Run! Similar panicked roars and shouts resounded in the 6th level of the Purgatory of Darkness. Wherever Lin Sun went, he was like a god of plague, scaring the vile souls to flee in panic. Finally, Lin Sun caught an Emperor Realm vile soul that failed to escape. But before he could rejoice, the fierce spirit that looked like a lion or tiger collapsed immediately. It knelt on the ground, crying and begging for mercy. Lin Sun's high fighting spirit was suddenly destroyed. He came to the Purgatory of Darkness to gain experience. But now, even the Emperor Realm vile souls on the 6th level had knelt down. How could he gain experience? It seems that it's time to go, Lin Sun sighed. He roughly understood that after the bloody battle yesterday, the vile souls on the 6th level of the Purgatory of Darkness were all scared out of their wits. None of them dared to fight him head-on. Get up! Lin Sun turned around and left. The vile soul that knelt on the ground was stunned for a while, then cried tears of joy. This ferocious guy actually spared me. He really spared me. On this day, Lin Sun left the 6th level of the Purgatory of Darkness for the 7th level. It was also on this day that the Emperor Realm vile souls distributed on the 6th level were all relieved. They smiled and celebrated with joy. It felt like sending away a god of plague. If such a scene was seen by those practitioners, they would be stunned. After all, vile souls were the most ferocious creatures in the world, and the Emperor Realm vile souls were even more terrifying. But now, the Emperor Realm vile souls on the 6th level were all scared by Lin Sun. Until countless years later, the Emperor Realm vile souls on the 6th level couldn't forget the young man who brought them endless fear and trembling. The 7th level of the Purgatory of Darkness. It was dark between heaven and earth. The air was full of terrible pressure, which was enough to crush any practitioner below the Emperor Realm in an instant. But obviously Lin Sun was an accident. After arriving here, he had to run his cultivation to the fullest every time he took a step. If he wanted to move forward quickly, he even had to blast away the omnipresent pressure. Lin Sun was not surprised but delighted. For him, the more dangerous a place was, the more immeasurable it was for refining his cultivation. I don't know where the Silver Bat Ghost Emperor is, Lin Sun thought as he moved forward. In the 4th level of the Purgatory of Darkness, the Cyan-Clothed Man once told him that the other half of the Heavenless Spear was in the hands of a vile soul called the Silver Bat Ghost Emperor in the 7th level. Lin Sun would not miss it. Time passed little by little. Unconsciously, 4 hours had passed. To Lin Sun's surprise, although he had slowed down a lot in these 4 hours, he had walked nearly 10,000 miles. Along the way, he didn't meet any ordinary vile souls, let alone Emperor Realm vile souls. It seemed that he was the only one left in this vast world. It was silent and desolate, depressing and depressing. Lin Sun didn't give up and kept moving forward. Half a day later, Lin Sun consumed nearly 1/3 of his strength just to resist the pressure of heaven and earth. But he still didn't find any trace of vile souls. What was going on? Just as Lin Sun was puzzled, he suddenly felt that the heavenless spear in his hand trembled slightly, as if it had a wonderful connection with a place far away. Lin Sun's eyes lit up. He took out the heavenless spear without hesitation and calmed down to feel it. After a while, he turned around and looked at a place in the distance. Was the other half of the heavenless spear there? Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun suppressed his inner impulse and didn't act immediately. He stood still, looked around for a while, and then began to work. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 5 doppelgangers of Tao appeared together, each took out some divine materials, and began to refine formation flags together. Some refined divine materials, and some carved Taoist patterns. Everything was done in an orderly manner and extremely fast. Soon, formation flags were refined one after another and inserted into different areas by Lin Sun himself. After a while, the nearby area had been covered by 99 formation flags. The flags were swaying, and the complex Taoist patterns inscribed on them were shining with a strange and obscure luster. Then, Lin Sun took out hundreds of millions of Taoist crystals and piled them up into several Taoist crystal mountains, suppressing the position of the formation eye. These Taoist crystals would serve as the source of the formation. After doing all this, Lin Sun had consumed most of his physical strength, and there were some beads of sweat on his forehead. The key was that refining those formation flags consumed a lot of energy. Without delay, he immediately sat cross-legged on the ground, took out 2 excellent source crystals of Tao, and began to replenish his physical strength. When Lin Sun recovered 80% of his physical strength, a sound wave like the sound of nature suddenly sounded in the distant sky. It was like the Sanskrit chanting and the sonorous sound of the Tao. The whole world became sacred. There were vague visions of heavenly flowers falling, golden lotuses emerging from the ground, dragons soaring, and golden chariots singing. There were sages chanting sutras, gods talking about metaphysics with a smile, green deer walking with a ganoderma in its mouth, and spiritual monkeys jumping with peaches in their hands. There were towering ancient trees, green bamboos, gurgling streams, and auspicious lights fluttering dreamily. In a trance, it seemed that this place was no longer the depressing dark and bloody purgatory, but a pure land of bliss, like the dwelling place of gods. When Lin Sun, who was meditating, opened his eyes and saw such a scene, he couldn't help being stunned. What was this? As soon as a thought came to Lin Sun's mind, a kind voice that went straight to the heart sounded in this sacred world. "This is the place where you become an emperor, my young friend." "Become an emperor?" Lin Sun whispered and glanced around. It was like being in a fairyland, peaceful and peaceful. "Yes, what you see now is the sign of the coming opportunity. It seems to be an illusion, but it is actually an auspicious sign." The voice sounded again. "Who are you?" Lin Sun asked. "I am your voice." The voice was ethereal. The voice can't be seen and can only be heard by yourself. What you hear is the most primitive obsession in your mind. Hurry up. If you miss this opportunity, You don't know how long you will have to wait for the next one. Maybe it will be thousands of years, or tens of thousands of years, or it will be hard to see it again in this life. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. His dark eyes were deep and mysterious. With the power of the third eye, everything in front of him was illusory, like the moon in the water. The world was still the dark and bloody world. However, because of that voice, this illusion that could be directly reflected in one's mind and divine soul was created. What surprised Lin Sun most was that if he didn't use the third eye, it was difficult for him to find that his mind and soul had already been affected by the voice. Undoubtedly, the owner of the voice was not simple. The voice, "I think you should be called Ghost Emperor Silverbat." As Lin Sun said, he stood up from the ground. His black eyes were like lightning, tearing all the illusions and locking on the place under the bloody sky in the distance. There was an inconspicuous silver bat there. Chapter 22:16. The silver bat was the size of a palm, with silver wings and a pair of claws as sharp as hooks hanging upside down. It was extremely inconspicuous in the dark and bloody void. When Lin Sun's eyes swept over the bat, it seemed to be surprised. Then its figure flashed and turned into a handsome boy in a silver robe. "I was born with the ancestral blood of the primordial silver bat. I was born to be proficient in the art of music. Over the years, at least hundreds of people have died because of this art. You are the second one who is not afraid of this art." The handsome boy in a silver robe walked over, his pupils glowing with a strange red light. He looked indescribably leisurely, as if he was taking a stroll. But Lin Sun's pupils showed a rare dignified expression. The aura of the Silver Bat Emperor was at least at the third level of the Emperor realm. "Who's the first one?" Lin Sun asked casually. The boy in a silver robe stopped 3 kilometers away from Lin Sun and said with a smile, "You want to know? I'll tell you if you defeat me." Lin Sun also smiled. "Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you?" The silver-robed youth said thoughtfully, "With your level of cultivation, to be able to kill your way to the 7th floor, you're definitely not an ordinary person. You should have some trump cards that can fight against Emperor Realm figures. But the gap between us is too wide. Even if you have trump cards, I'm afraid there's not much hope to kill me." "Why don't I try?" Lin Sun said. The boy in a silver robe stared at Lin Sun for a moment and said, "Aren't you curious why there are no other evil spirits on the 7th floor except for me?" "You'll know after I defeat you," Lin Sun said. The boy in a silver robe laughed. "Well, as long as you hand over the other half of the heavenless spear, I'll let you leave immediately. Whether you go to the 8th floor or return to the 6th floor, I promise I won't stop you." "Talking so much nonsense just proves that you have no confidence in winning," Lin Sun said indifferently. "In that case, I might as well speak frankly. Hand over the other half of the heavenless spear and I'll spare your life." The boy in a silver robe was stunned and pointed to his nose. "You really think I'm easy to talk to?" He was very surprised and even incredulous. Even if a quasi-emperor had some means to fight against the Emperor realm, he shouldn't be so arrogant. "I can only see that you think I'm easy to bully." Lin Sun sighed softly. The silver-robed young man took a deep breath before he flipped his palm, and the incomplete body of a spear floated up into appearance, and it emanated an obscure fluctuation. Suddenly, the other half of the spear in Lin Sun's hand became hot and resonated. The silver-robed youth revealed a bewitching smile and waved his hand. "Baby, come here." Boom. Of Lin of the spear of water. Of the of the king of the. The smile on the silver-robed youngster's face froze and his eyes narrowed. His heart was somewhat unsettled. Not to mention quasi-emperor Juing, even martial emperor experts would not be able to withstand the power of this grab if they were caught off guard. As of the down as of the emperor. Looks like this treasure doesn't listen to you at all, Lin Sun laughed mockingly. A ruthless light flashed in the eyes of the silver-robed youth. He took a deep breath and grabbed at the air again. This time, he used his true power. Rumble! Even space itself distorted and collapsed, and ear-piercing explosions rang out. It was obvious how shocking the suction force was. But the embarrassing scene happened again. The half of the heavenless spear in Lin Sun's hand was still motionless. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing more heartily. With a teasing look in his eyes, he didn't speak. However, that gaze was like a blade that pierced into the heart of the silver-robed youth, and it caused his face to darken while ruthless killing intent couldn't help but surge out from his eyes. At this time, Lin Sun also waved his hand. Come here. A pitch-black piece of copper was in his palm, overflowing with the original aura of the Mother Cauldron. Instantly, the silver-robed youth felt his wrist shake violently, and the half of the spear in his hand simply seemed like a wild horse that had broken free from its reins, and it produced an unprecedented strength to struggle free. Whoosh! The silver-robed youth was caught off guard, and let half of the spear fly out of his hand. Damn it! The silver-robed youth suddenly became furious. He turned into a silver lightning and rushed up to grab at it. Up! At the same time, Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Boom! A myriad of azure-colored lotus flowers suddenly surged into appearance in the heavens and the earth, and they swayed as if they covered the heavens and the earth and filled the heavens and the earth. The crystal-green lotus flowers were all surging with mysterious and complicated Taoist patterns. The light was flowing, and the divine light was rising, illuminating the sky. In an instant, the silver-robed youth's face suddenly changed. When he was about to stop and dodge, it was too late. He was like a little tadpole that strayed into the depths of lotus flowers. When he looked at the surroundings, it was a boundless expanse of boundless green lotus leaves that reached the heavens. Every single green lotus had the image of a god residing within it, and they were chanting scriptures while emanating a world-crushing aura of slaughter. Kill! 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 Bursts of roars resounded like the roar of the angry gods. The ears of the silver-robed youth were buzzing, and he saw stars in front of his eyes. His whole body was tense. He felt a great sense of danger. That damn little thing. He has already set up a big formation. The silver-robed youth's face was livid, and his eyes were full of monstrous anger. His body was flowing with the terrible silver divine flame, and he exerted a secret method and hit out with his palm. The palm power easily smashed and incinerated a large green lotus nearby, but in a flash, another one grew from the same place. The silver-robed youth's face was ugly. He glanced around and began to break through the encirclement with all his strength. He didn't rush around randomly, but rushed in a fixed direction. Boom! The silver divine flame spread from his body, producing the power to burn the sky and destroy the earth. His lips made a roar, and the rolling sound waves turned into thousands of sharp blades, chopping forward. Each blade was branded with the law of the Emperor Realm, and its power was unimaginably terrible. In just a moment, the silver-robed youth plowed a straight path between the heaven and earth covered by green lotuses, which could be said to be irresistible. But soon, the silver-robed youth found something wrong. This world of green lotuses seemed to be endless. Even if he rushed forward in a straight line, he couldn't kill his way out. As for his stamina, he had already lost 20% of his stamina in this battle. My little friend, the other half of the heavenless spear has fallen into your hands. Well, I admit defeat and will no longer be your enemy. Can you stop now? The silver-robed youth said in a deep voice, and his voice surged in all directions like ripples. He was trying to judge Lin Sun's position. As long as Lin Sun dared to speak, he would be locked by his sound waves at once. But Lin Sun didn't speak. What answered him was a monstrous killing tribulation that came from within the formation. Boom! In this world of green lotuses, countless godlike phantoms jumped out. Their figures were majestic, like the ancient gods on an expedition. The unparalleled divine light, as sharp as a sword and as overbearing as a war knife, swept and galloped. In an instant, the silver-robed youth's face changed greatly. Open! Without hesitation, he used all his power, sacrificed his treasures, and fought hard like a trapped beast. The power he showed was earth-shattering. Standing outside the formation, Lin Sun watched all this closely. Just now, when he noticed the strange movement of the heavenless spear, he immediately judged that the ghost Emperor Silverbat was on the 7th floor. The reason why he didn't choose to take the initiative to attack but stayed in place to set up the formation was that he knew that the ghost Emperor Silverbat, who also controlled the other half of the heavenless spear, must have noticed his arrival. Then, there was the situation of waiting for the rabbit. At this time, the lifeless killing formation, ranked 9th in all heavens, trapped the ghost Emperor Silverbat. Different from the last time, this time Lin Sun set up the formation with formation flags in advance and used Taoist crystals as the source of the formation. Its power was more than twice as strong as the last time. Boom! The lifeless killing formation was activated, shocking the 9 heavens and 10 earth. The unparalleled killing intent made the 7th floor of the dark purgatory turbulent. The power of this formation was enough to kill an emperor, which was confirmed by Array Emperor Deer as early as ancient times. Although the lifeless killing formation Lin Sun set up was still incomplete, it had about 70% of its power. It was not difficult to trap and kill ordinary emperors. But it was obvious that the ghost Emperor Silverbat was not an ordinary emperor. Although he was trapped in the formation, he was still fighting fiercely, showing his incomparable strength. Lin Sun's black eyes were deep and calm. While controlling the formation, he paid attention to the consumption of the Taoist crystals as the source of the formation. Almost every moment, the operation of the lifeless killing formation would consume 100,000 Taoist crystals. Until now, only a moment, the Taoist crystals piled up near the source of the formation had consumed 30 million, and they were still being consumed. Such a scene alone was enough to make any practitioner feel distressed and bleed. But Lin Sun didn't care at all. He had hundreds of millions of Taoist crystals. The only thing that made him frown was that although the power of the lifeless killing formation he had set up was incomparable, it was not enough to kill the ghost Emperor Silverbat, who was at least at the 3rd level of the Emperor realm. Boom! After 10 minutes, the lifeless killing formation shook violently, and a huge crack appeared. The silver-robed young man rushed out of it like a flame. But his hair was disheveled, and he was wounded all over. His silver robe was torn like a rag, and his exposed body was full of shocking bloodstains. His pupils were scarlet, and his aura was fierce and tyrannical. He looked up to the sky and screamed, "Little bastard, come out and die!" He was so angry that he was repeatedly injured by the suppression of the formation. If he didn't have secret treasures and use forbidden means to fight desperately, he would have been trapped in it. Even so, when he killed his way out of the formation, his vitality was greatly damaged, as if he had been peeled off a layer of skin. "Old bastard, what are you shouting for?" In the distance, Lin Sun and his 5 doppelgangers, each holding a different emperor weapon, came together. Their momentum was so strong that it shook the earth. Why did it become 6 people? The silver-robed young man was stunned, and almost thought that he was hallucinating. Chapter 22:17. While the silver-robed youngster was still in a daze, Lin Sun and his doppelgangers had already rushed to him. Boom! As soon as they attacked, they launched a thunderous attack. All kinds of emperor weapons released different powers, causing the whole world to be in turmoil. Lin Sun, on the other hand, ran his body to the extreme. Whether it was fist force, palm print, finger force, or other secret methods, they were all like the abyss, the furnace, but not the furnace like the chaos, revealing infinite power. For a moment, the silver-robed youngster was a little flustered and tired to deal with the attacks. But he was a fierce soul at the 3rd level of Emperor Realm after all. In order to improve his strength over the years, he had already devoured and refined all the fierce souls in the seventh floor. Even if he was seriously injured at this time, he was still extraordinary. Soon, he stabilized the situation and launched a counterattack. Boom! His body was flowing with silver divine flame, intertwined with the law, and the whistling sound was even more shocking to the soul. His attacks were fierce, swift, and overbearing. Even the Emperor weapons of Kunlun couldn't suppress him. Little bastard, even I have to admit that you can kill a character at the first level of Emperor realm with your foundation. You're a one-of-a-kind person. Unfortunately, I'm not at the first level of Emperor realm. The silver-robed youngster let out a vicious and ferocious roar. His scarlet eyes were full of violence. His attacks were violent. Every single move he made emanated a peerlessly terrifying Emperor's Dao aura, and it repeatedly defeated Lin Sun's attacks. It shook Lin Sun and his clones to the point their vital blood roiled while their countenances turned pale. If it weren't for the Emperor weapons of Kunlun, Lin Sun would have been defeated long ago. Boom! The silver-robed youngster waved his fist, and the bloody light flowed. He easily blew Lin Sun away. As he stepped forward, the attacks of the 5 doppelgangers were also shattered by the power around him. At this moment, he was as ferocious as a god. His bearing was ostentatious as he threw his head back and laughed. If I'm not wrong, these are Kunlun monarch weapons. Kid, you're really lucky. Even I'm jealous of you. From today onwards, everything you own will be mine. In the roar, the silver-robed youngster suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed. Crack! The right arm of Greenwood Taoist physique was torn off and blood spilled. Lin Sun groaned in pain. His doppelgangers were seriously injured, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. But his expression was the same as before, and his fighting spirit was rising. Since it was training, how could he not be injured? The torture of blood and fire, the ordeal of danger and destruction. Only then could one temper and transform to the extreme. Kill. He attacked with all his might. His consciousness was unprecedentedly focused and calm. All the Tao and techniques that he controlled poured out like the tide. During this process, his main body and 5 clones were ceaselessly injured, and they were suppressed to the point they were almost unable to raise their heads. But even then, he still stood firm and didn't compromise. Little by little, he fought like a madman and fell into an extreme state of battle. He forgot the heavens, the earth, the people, and all the Tao and techniques he possessed. There was only one thought in his mind: fight. When looked at from afar, his main body and clones seemed as if they were burning. Even if they were covered in injuries and had their bodies dyed red with blood, they still possessed an arrogant and unyielding bearing, and the aura of battle shook the heavens. Fight. Lin Sun's spirit, chi, and spirit were completely boiling inside and outside his body, showing an unprecedented release. His figure moved horizontally and vertically with the momentum of hitting the sky and breaking the cloud. In a trance, it was as if the Emperor of War had reappeared in the world, dominating the heavens. The reason was that Lin Sun's fighting momentum at the moment was stimulated by the Battle Saint technique, which completely awakened his cultivation and foundation. This also made Lin Sun, at this moment, far more powerful than in the past. It should be known that the Battle Saint technique was the embodiment of the Emperor of War's cultivation. It was a supreme scripture that specialized in the way of fighting. The Battle Emperor had been invincible and invincible throughout his life. Even the previous venerable Emperor Nameless was defeated by him. How supreme was his power! The inheritance he left behind was naturally no small matter. In the past, Lin Sun's comprehension and control of the Battle Saint technique was only limited to fighting and killing, and each time he had a different understanding. Until now, his cultivation had reached the consummation of the 3rd realm of Quasi-Emperor, and his understanding of the Battle Saint technique had become more profound. Every time he used it, he was amazed. The core of this technique was the word fighting. Fighting against the heavens, fighting against the earth, fighting against the gods and Buddhas, fighting against all enemies since ancient and modern times, killing without stopping, fighting without losing. This was a technique that integrated all of one's strength into the battle, and one's will, state of mind, and courage could all be turned into the momentum of fighting. With only the will to fight in the heart, who would dare to claim to be invincible in front of the world? Even if he died, he would die in battle. Boom! Heaven and earth were in chaos, and Tao sounds roared. The silver-robed youngster's expression finally changed, feeling astonished and even trembling. His opponent was clearly riddled with injuries, his body was stained with blood, and he was suppressed to the point where he could not lift his head, but every time he miraculously survived, he failed to kill as he wished. The most frightening thing was that his opponent was seriously injured, but his momentum was like oil being added to a raging fire, growing stronger and more ostentatious. That pure and unrestrained fighting will was hard for him to imagine that this was what a Zhu Hua quasi-emperor could possess. Kill! The silver-robed youngster let out a long roar, his killing intent blazing. If he let a Zhu Hua quasi-emperor escape alive, it would be an irrevocable shame for him. After a moment, boom! Lin Sun was injured again. His body was broken, and blood poured out like a waterfall. His face was pale and transparent, but the fighting fire in his pupils was burning more and more. His fearless and unbridled gaze made the silver-robed youth feel uncomfortable. Things had already come to this point, and this little thing still didn't feel fear and dread? Was there really a person like him who was not afraid of death in this world? Little thing, in the face of absolute power, all your struggles are just like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, an egg hitting a stone. It's not worth mentioning. The silver-haired youngster looked ferocious and cruel, and his attacks became more and more fierce. But at this moment, a low voice came from Lin Sun's lips. "Evil creature, it's time to end it." Boom! In his chest, the spiritual vein glowed with a strange luster, releasing the power of forbidden death. In an instant, the world seemed to be still, and all things were fixed. The silver-haired youngster who rushed over was like a bug on a still canvas, and Lin Sun had already attacked at this moment. The immeasurable bottle, as white as mutton-fat jade, emerged from his palm, and the mouth of the bottle spouted an extremely bright sword qi. There was no return. This sword was condensed from Battle Emperor Wu Yang's lifetime of cultivation. Puff! The silver-haired youngster's head was chopped off, and the unparalleled sword qi raged, destroying his body and crushing it in the void, turning it into a rain of blood that dyed the sky red. This sword, supplemented by the power of forbidden death and the power of the immeasurable bottle, killed the silver bat ghost emperor of the third level of the emperor realm. If other cultivators were to see this scene, they would be shocked and cause a great uproar. Even martial emperors would be horrified. After all, it was terrifying enough that Quasi-Emperor Zhuyang could kill a first-level martial emperor, but now he could even kill a third-level martial emperor. This was simply earth-shattering. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the smell of blood was thick. Lin Sun's figure floated to the ground, breathing heavily, his face pale and translucent, like a lamp at the end of its oil. This time, his injuries were indeed very serious, but his eyes were full of gratification and excitement. This battle could be said to be the most dangerous and difficult battle he had encountered since entering the purgatory of darkness. He did not rely on the power of Yi, Wu Kei, or the spirit of the broken blade, but relied on his own cultivation and treasures to kill a third-level martial emperor. At the same time, it also brought him an unexpected tempering and enlightenment. After calming his emotions, Lin Sun began to clean up the spoils of war. What he did not expect was that the silver bat ghost emperor's wealth was incomparably rich, and there were 13 ancient treasures alone. Every one of them was almost completely intact. There was a Dao sword, a flying knife, a bronze bell, a jade pagoda, an alms bowl, a horsetail whisk, and so on. In addition, there was also a fist-sized Great Tao Origin crystal that was steaming with chaotic qi. What was sealed within it was a complete law of Emperor Tao, and not a fragment. This was too shocking. Lin Sun had also collected many Great Tao Origin crystals from the 1st level to the 7th level, but this was the first time he had obtained a Great Tao Origin crystal of such quality. After putting away all the spoils of war, Lin Sun looked at the vast and silent world and muttered to himself, "Previously, you asked me why you are the only vile spirit on the 7th level. The answer is too easy to guess. The other vile spirits must have been killed by you. And you said that there are only 2 people who are not afraid of your power of rhythm, and the first is naturally my second senior brother." Lin Sun took a deep breath and turned to leave. He needed to rest for a period of time, and he also needed to thoroughly absorb and refine the insights he had gained from the battle. In the land of darkness. 5 days had passed since Lin Sun entered the purgatory of darkness. What? It's only been 5 days, and that kid has already killed his way to the 7th level? Big Yellow, who was drinking wine, was so shocked that its dog ears stood up. It was originally very arrogant, squatting in front of the table and drinking alone. His posture was as if he was aloof from the world, but now he had a dumbfounded look on his face. Only 5 days, and he had already killed his way to the 7th level? Even its master, Tower Master Bronze Sparrow, was not this fierce. Really? After a while, Big Yellow turned his head and looked at the drunkard who had just brought back the news. His face was full of suspicion. The drunkard looked complicated and said with emotion, "The news from Qingying can't be false." He was also quite disturbed. He clearly remembered that it took his master 10 days to kill his way to the 7th level from the 1st level. But this little junior brother of his master was obviously more fierce. In a sense, he had directly broken a record set by the Lord in the past. Let's go and have a look together. I don't believe that there is a man in this world who is more arrogant, no, more powerful than my master. Big Yellow got up, wagged his tail, and trotted all the way out of the hall. The drunkard thought for a while, took out a communication jade slip, recorded the news he had just received in it, and then threw it to a servant stationed outside the hall. "Go, send the jade slip to my master. P.S. From today on, the update time is fixed between 6 and 7 o'clock every night, and strive to update twice in a row." Chapter 22:18. In the Secret Land. Zhong Qiu was reading some news that had just arrived. The magical lotus feast of the city of 10,000 stars has come to an end. The 6 Tao courts and the 10 war clans have decided to stay in the dark world and wait for the nirvana of freedom to come. Buddhist Emperor Fan Ku, the headmaster of the Hidden Land Realm, and Yu Kuan-zi, the headmaster of the Xingzhao ancient sect, announced on the same day that they would sever all relations with the Bronze Sparrow Tower. The corners of Zhong Qiu's lips curled into an undisguised sneer when he read the news. This situation was within his expectations. Everyone has his own ambition. Some people are willing to be dogs. Who can stop them? Zhong Qiu continued to read. After a while, Zhong Qiu was lost in thought after reading all the news. The magical lotus feast of the city of 10,000 stars had come to an end. What was discussed in this feast was all about the nirvana of freedom, which was unknown to outsiders. But for Zhong Qiu, it was easy for him to inquire about some information. Unfortunately, the so-called inside information was far less than what Zhong Qiu knew. That's right. The information about the nirvana of freedom was deduced by my master at a great cost. Who else in this world can know more than me? While Zhong Qiu was thinking, the latest news came back. "My lord, there's news from the Dark Land." A respectful voice sounded. Then, a jade slip fell into Zhong Qiu's hand. After looking at it for a while, Zhong Qiu was stunned. A trace of imperceptible surprise flashed in the depths of his eyes, but he immediately recovered his composure. The jade slip recorded some of Lin Sun's performance after entering the purgatory of darkness. Zhong Qiu made a judgment in his heart. His performance in the first 5 levels is average and not worth mentioning. His performance in the 6th level is remarkable. The Ghost Emperor Silverbat has the power of the 3rd level of the Emperor Realm. This surprised Zhong Qiu. A long time ago, when he entered the 7th level, he also saw the Ghost Emperor Silverbat, who was only at the 1st level of the Emperor Realm. But now Lin Sun could kill the Ghost Emperor Silverbat, who had transformed into the 3rd level of the Emperor Realm, which surprised Zhong Qiu. In the end, Zhong Qiu nodded imperceptibly, to surpass the heavenly chasm of the Emperor Realm and overturn the knowledge of the ages. Not bad. It wasn't that his requirements were too high, and it was instead, as far as he was concerned, as long as this little junior brother of his was the escaped one of Mount Innerheart, and he possessed numerous supreme inheritances and numerous Kunlun imperial weapons. So, this little junior brother of his naturally ought to possess a combat strength that was different from the world. Among the peak quasi-emperors, if he couldn't even compare to those senior brothers and sisters of Mount Fangtsuan, then that would truly be disappointing. This was Zhong Qiu's opinion. It was reasonable for Lin Sun to surpass the achievements made by his senior brothers and sisters in this realm in the past. Who is guarding the 8th level of the Purgatory of Darkness? Zhong Qiu suddenly asked. A respectful voice sounded. My lord, the 8th level has been guarded by Battle Emperor Lingwu for the past 8,000 years. Lingwu? Zhong Qiu thought for a moment and said, send a message to me. Don't let Lingwu obstruct this kid's action, and don't give him any help. Go. Yes. After doing all of this, Zhong Qiu stood up and strode towards the distance. Recently, whenever he had free time, he would chat with she. In his opinion, she was the same kind of person as him. Proud, strong, confident, and unyielding. However, when he was halfway there, Zhong Qiu stopped again and frowned. He suddenly realized that he seemed to have been too proactive recently. This was not his style at all. After a long silence, Zhong Qiu made a decision. Well, I'll just go and chat with him about the little junior brother. Well, I believe he must be anxious to hear something about the little junior brother. If Lin Sun knew that his little junior brother had become an excuse for his second senior brother to chat with she, how would he feel? Perhaps this was called the more arrogant a person was, the more hypocritical he was? At the entrance of the Purgatory of Darkness, when Qing Ying saw the drunkard and Goldie coming together, he was not surprised at all. Anyone who heard that someone had reached the 7th level of the Purgatory of Darkness in just 5 days would not be able to sit still, including Qing Ying himself. When he learned of Lin Sun's amazing performance in the Purgatory of Darkness, his beautiful clear eyes couldn't help widening and drifting. This was indeed too unbelievable. Qing Ying, did that kid really make it to the 7th level in 5 days? Big Yellow asked anxiously as soon as he arrived. Yes. Qing Ying nodded and added, moreover, he has killed the Silver Bat Ghost Emperor in the 7th level, so he can enter the 8th level smoothly. Big Yellow widened its eyes again and thought, he can already enter the 8th level? The 8th level? The drunkard's eyes were dazed as well. That's a Tao forbidden area. I remember that it was Battle Emperor Lingwu who oversaw it that suppressed some of the tyrannical and ferocious energy and condensed it into a soul. This boy will definitely stop at the 8th level. Suddenly, Goldie said fiercely, although there are no fierce souls in that damn place, there are Tao forbidden fields. Even those in the Emperor realm will be suppressed to death if they enter. I remember that it took Master nearly a year to get out of the Tao forbidden fields when he tried to break through the 8th level. During that period, he almost couldn't hold on for many times, the drunkard said. According to Master, entering the Tao forbidden fields is not a test of one's realm, but one's will and state of mind. Master is Master. How can that boy be compared with him? Goldie said with a contemptuous look. At this moment, Qing Ying said indifferently, but just now, when Child Lin reached the 7th level, He has broken the record of Tower Master Bronze Sparrow. Goldie widened his eyes and wanted to refute, but he had nothing to say for a while. Facts speak louder than words. Then I'd like to see whether he will stop at the 8th level. Goldie groaned. I'm looking forward to it too. The drunkard showed a look of expectation. Time flew. 7 days later. On the 7th level of Purgatory of Darkness, Lin Sun woke up from meditation. At this moment, a terrifying and boundless pressure spread from his body, causing the world to wail and the void to tremble. This kind of pressure was no different from the real Emperor's power, and could even make the first level of Emperor Realm tremble. In just 7 days, Lin Sun integrated all the fighting experience from the 6th level to the 7th level into his own body, so that his combat strength had another transformation. But in terms of cultivation, Lin Sun was still at the consummation of Quasi-Emperor. The reason was that his perception of the Great Way and his understanding of martial arts had improved to a higher level, and there were signs of extreme consummation. Although his cultivation had not broken through, the control of the Great Way and the improvement of his attainments in martial arts could also improve his combat strength. If I encounter an opponent like the Silver Bat Ghost Emperor again, I might still lose if I don't use the passing forbidden divine ability. However, I should be able to resist for a while, and it shouldn't be difficult for me to escape. Lin Sun calmly felt the changes in his own strength. His Tao and Dharma were smelted in the chaotic realm, and what he sought was the way of containing all the Tao in the world and developing all the Dharma in the world. It was destined that if he wanted to become an emperor, the danger and killing he would face would be far greater than that of others in the same realm. Like now, what Lin Sun was doing was smelting all the Tao he had mastered and refining all the Tao and Dharma into his own. In this way, his cultivation could reach the unprecedented peak. That was the real consummation. It's time to go to the 8th level. Lin Sun got up and floated away. The 8th level of Purgatory of Darkness. Rumble. As soon as he entered this world, the pressure rose sharply, and a violent repulsive force collided with Lin Sun's body, causing a series of roars. If there was only the pressure of one holy mountain on the 7th level before, now there were 10 or even 100 holy mountains oppressing him at the same time. I'm afraid that ordinary Emperor Realm figures will find it difficult to move here. Lin Sun turned his hand, and a Taoist sword flew across the sky. With a casual slash, the horrible pressure in front of him was directly cut open. Fortunately, it's easy to resist force with force. As Lin Sun moved forward, he slashed the invisible pressure with his sword. This kind of horrible pressure was transformed by the order of this world. It was like a substantial wave, oppressing Lin Sun. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed to be moving forward in furious waves. Rumble. Looking from afar, wherever Lin Sun passed, there were streaks of sword chi crisscrossing, tearing cracks in the void between heaven and earth, and dispersing the horrible pressure. After walking for a long time, the pressure became stronger and stronger. Lin Sun could clearly feel that as the pressure became stronger, his physical strength began to be consumed faster and faster. He had to use all his strength to resolve the omnipresent pressure. The only thing that made Lin Sun feel at ease was that he had not seen any evil soul along the way, so he only needed to concentrate on resolving the pressure he suffered along the way. Otherwise, once an evil soul came, he not only had to resist the pressure, but also had to fight, which was bound to be extremely dangerous. Later, while resisting the pressure with his own cultivation, Lin Sun also began to deliberately attract some of the pressure to bombard himself. In other words, he was trying to temper himself with that kind of pressure. However, the pressure on the 8th floor was so terrible that ordinary Emperor Realm could hardly move forward. Lin Sun could only resist and resolve part of the pressure first, and then temper himself. Otherwise, when the pressure swarmed up, his whole body might explode. Even if he could be reborn from a drop of blood, he would be squeezed to death again. If this cycle continued, he would definitely die. Rumble. In the following time, the sword chi whistled between heaven and earth, strangling and tearing the horrible pressure. The remaining pressure was drawn by Lin Sun to temper and bombard himself constantly, making bursts of roaring sound. Interesting, under the pressure of the power of the world, not only the body but also the spirit is tempered. Gradually, Lin Sun could clearly feel some changes in his body after being constantly bombarded by the pressure. Chapter 22:19. 2 hours later. Under this constantly rising pressure, Lin Sun had to stop and rest. He had to recover his physical strength because it was consumed too fast. Clatter. Lin Sun waved his sleeves to set up a large formation to resist the pressure of this world. He sat cross-legged in the formation, seizing the time to restore his strength. After 30 minutes, Lin Sun used up 3 good source crystals of Tao to restore his physical strength, while the operation of the large formation consumed nearly 3 million source crystals. But Lin Sun didn't care about the pain. If he didn't restore his strength, he might not be able to get out of the 8th floor at all. He continued to move forward. In this way, he stopped to recover from time to time and moved forward from time to time. 3 days later. After such a long time, Lin Sun had to stop to rest and recuperate every time he moved forward 1,000 miles. Hundreds of millions of source crystals were consumed like running water. However, Lin Sun could still feel that his body and soul had changed a lot after being bombarded and tempered by the pressure in the past 3 days. There were many subtle and imperceptible transformations. This kind of harvest made Lin Sun quite excited. With his current cultivation, he had already far surpassed any strong man in the same realm. It was extremely difficult for him to make further progress at the extreme point of this realm. But now it was amazing that he had made such a subtle transformation in just a few days. 7 days later. As Lin Sun moved forward again, his whole body relaxed as if he had unloaded a huge mountain on his body. The sudden feeling of lightness stunned Lin Sun for a while, as if he was going to ascend to heaven and become an immortal in the next moment. But immediately Lin Sun frowned. This was still the 8th floor. How could the omnipresent pressure disappear? He even suddenly remembered that he hadn't met a single ferocious soul all the way so far. What was going on? Who? At this moment, a low voice suddenly sounded in Lin Sun's ear. Lin Sun was shocked and spread out his spiritual awareness. In front of a canyon thousands of meters away, a man in a gray robe sat cross-legged in front of the canyon entrance. The man in a gray robe looked cold and his eyes were closed. He was thin, with Taoist light flowing all over his body, exuding the terrible power belonging to the Emperor realm. With a single look, Lin Sun could tell that this gray-robed man was no ferocious soul. Instead, he was a true Motherf * King Human Emperor. At the same time, the gray-robed man also noticed Lin Sun, and his eyes burst out a terrifying light. Little boy, I see that you're only at the consummate quasi-emperor realm, but you're actually able to reach the 8th level of the purgatory of darkness and even withstand the pressure of the order gravity to reach here. Don't tell me that your strength is already no weaker than an emperor realm expert? When he spoke up to this point, the gray-robed man revealed a wisp of surprise, and he seemed to be extremely shocked. I'm Lin Sun. Nice to meet you. Lin Sun cupped his hands. Only now did he realize that the place he passed through earlier was actually a gravitational restricted area formed from the order of the heavens and the earth. Moreover, he'd already discerned that the gray-robed man's strength was extremely terrifying, and he was much stronger than the Silver Bat Ghost Emperor. However, he was utterly unable to discern exactly how high his cultivation was. You are also a successor of Copper Sparrow Tower? The gray-robed man was even more surprised. But why have I never heard of a character like you? Lin Sun said, Senior, you misunderstood me. I'm not a successor of Copper Sparrow Tower. I just got the opportunity to come here by chance. I see. But the fact that you can come here proves that you have a deep relationship with Copper Sparrow Tower. The gray-robed man revealed a look of understanding, and then immediately became serious. He said, "My little friend, you'd better leave quickly. The Tao Forbidden Area is in front of us. It's too dangerous. Not to mention you, even an Emperor Realm expert can't cross it." The Tao Forbidden Area. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and said, "May I ask what kind of danger is hidden in this so-called Tao Forbidden Area? Look over there." Although the gray-robed man looked cold, his attitude was very good. He pointed to the distance. The world there was completely covered by the scarlet color of blood. Shocking bolts of lightning flowed within it, and there were even terrifying phantoms faintly appearing within it. They seemed like humans, but they weren't, and they seemed like demons, but they weren't. Just looking at it from a distance, Lin Sun's pupils shrank. That's the Tao restriction area, and a mass of fragmented will energy is suppressed within it. Those will energies were left behind by the great figures that were buried here at the very beginning of the primeval times, and they haven't dissipated throughout the ages. Once one enters it, one's will and cultivation realm will suffer unimaginable suppression. The gray-robed man said, "For 8,000 years, I've been guarding here because I'm worried that those willpower will rush out. If that happens, it will absolutely be an unimaginable disaster for anyone who enters the purgatory of darkness." Lin Sun's expression was uncertain. Only then did he realize that the real danger of the 8th floor was not the evil spirits, but the broken willpower left by the powerful figures in primitive times. "Senior, as far as I know, there have been people who have broken through this place in the past countless years." After thinking for a while, Lin Sun said, "Like the master of Copper Sparrow Tower, wasn't he also at the peak of Quasi-Emperor Realm?" When it came to the master of Copper Sparrow Tower, the gray-robed man looked serious and said, "Little friend, you don't know that the master entered the 8th floor in primitive times. At that time, the forbidden area had just been formed, and the willpower distributed in it was far less terrible than it is now." Lin Sun was stunned and said, "But I still want to have a try." The gray-robed man frowned. "Little friend, God is jealous of heroes. You have amazing aptitude and strength, but you'd better be careful. Don't act blindly." Lin Sun was speechless and cupped his hands. "Senior, you're right, but I won't give up like this. I hope you can help me." "You?" The gray-robed man glared and seemed a little annoyed. But right at this moment, with a command in his heart, he stretched out his hand and grabbed at space, and a jade slip appeared in his hand. After a quick check, the gray-robed man was stunned. The jade slip recorded an order from the master of Copper Sparrow Tower. "If you see Lin Sun, don't obstruct or help him, and let him practice alone." "What did you say your name just now?" The gray-robed man couldn't help asking, as if he wanted to reconfirm. "Lin Sun," said Lin Sun. The gray-robed man's eyes were full of surprise. He really didn't expect that such a young man could let his master give such an order in person. After thinking about it, he said, "Well, you can go, but remember that if you encounter danger, I won't help you." Lin Sun smiled and said, "Thank you for your help." With that, he had already rushed to the distance. "Little friend." The gray-robed man couldn't help saying, "Remember, the real danger of the forbidden field is the confrontation between willpower and state of mind. If you can't hold on, withdraw quickly. Don't try to be brave." Lin Sun turned around, cupped his hands, and rushed to the distance again. Between heaven and earth, blood was rolling like a tide, steaming like mist, and lightning and thunder were flashing in it, with heart-palpitating waves of destruction. Numerous illusory figures faintly appeared in the blood-red heavens and earth, and every single one of them possessed a different aura. Like a group of gods, they were extremely terrifying. This was the Forbidden Field. At the beginning of the primitive times, in the first tribulation of destruction, the incomplete willpower left by many powerful people who were buried turned into such a unique and dangerous field. The incomplete willpower in it had been eroded for thousands of years, so it could be imagined how powerful it was. Standing in the distance and staring at this scene for a long time, Lin Sun suddenly asked, "Senior, if you want to enter the 9th floor, do you have to pass through here?" In the distance, the gray-robed man was stunned for a moment and then said, "Yes." He didn't expect that Lin Sun didn't care about how dangerous the forbidden field was, but was thinking about entering the 9th floor. The gray-robed man didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Lin Sun was too arrogant, but he could kill his way to the 8th floor, so his strength was absolutely against the natural order. But if he wasn't arrogant, he insisted on taking risk. If he couldn't break through the place covered by the forbidden field, he would really die. Chapter 22:20. Boom. As soon as he entered the forbidden field, an illusory figure rushed towards Lin Sun. It was an extremely thin man with a crown on his head. His figure was vague, but his every move was like an emperor patrolling the world. As he slapped, Lin Sun was blown away before he could resist. His blood and chi were rolling all over his body. He was so uncomfortable that he almost coughed up blood. But he noticed at the first time that there was no trace of injury on his body after such a heavy blow. Instead, his soul and state of mind felt extremely uncomfortable, as if they were hit by a heavy hammer. The man with a crown on his head attacked again. His body was like a towering mountain, which made people feel particularly small, like an ant looking up at the sky. Lin Sun didn't hesitate to use the broken sword to kill him. But a strange scene appeared. The broken sword didn't hurt the man with a crown at all, as if it was cut in the air. On the contrary, Lin Sun was slapped away again. His eyes darkened, his soul was shaken, and his state of mind showed signs of instability. It seems that the senior is right. The willpower in this forbidden field only targets the soul, will, and state of mind. Lin Sun realized that this would be an extremely different kind of battle. It was not a competition of cultivation or fighting power. It was a competition of willpower and state of mind. In such a battle, all external objects such as the broken sword and Kunlun Emperor weapon were useless. Lin Sun could only rely on his own state of mind and soul to fight against it. Thinking of this, Lin Sun completely let go of all distractions and launched an attack. Both state of mind and soul were extremely mysterious and obscure powers. The most direct embodiment was the power and fighting spirit that appeared in the battle. Boom! The next moment, Lin Sun had already fought with the man with the crown. The light of Tao roared, and the divine light was steaming. Boom! 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 Soon, Lin Sun was suppressed and constantly shaken back. The shadow with a crown on his head looked extremely powerful and terrible. Although it was a broken willpower, its every move had the power to suppress the sky. It was not a real cultivation, but a pure suppression of willpower, which was completely different from the general battle. Although Lin Sun was shaken back several times, he was not injured. Only his mind and soul suffered frequent impacts and bombardment. If it was any other person that suffered such a blow, that person's mental state and will would have probably been crushed a long time ago, and their cultivation would have vanished along with it. But Lin Sun was different. Up to now, his state of mind and willpower had been tempered many times. They had long been as tough as a rock and would never change. Every thought was sparkling and translucent, like a blade or sword. Just like when he was young in the soul-refining tower in White Jade, capital of ancient desolation, Lin Sun already had a strong state of mind. My heart is like a knife, and I can cut the sun, moon, ghosts and gods. In these past few years, along with the improvement of his cultivation, his path towards the Tao was practically constantly accompanied by storms of blood and boundless battles. The tempering of blood and fire and the beating of life and death had long made his will indestructible. Kill! Every time he was shaken back, Lin Sun would rush up without being discouraged. The more setbacks he faced, the braver he became. His state of mind and willpower had never been shaken. Gradually, as time went by, the number of times Lin Sun was forced back began to decrease. A quarter of an hour later, Lin Sun was already able to fight against the man with a crown. This kind of confrontation was purely a confrontation of state of mind and willpower. After 30 minutes, Lin Sun waved his fist. This punch condensed all his willpower, and his state of mind was unprecedentedly calm and concentrated, so that this punch produced a kind of invincible momentum. Boom! The figure of the man with a crown suddenly exploded. Lin Sun was not defeated in the battle of martial arts, but by the willpower and mental power imprinted in this punch. The light rain fell all over the sky. After the figure of the man with a crown collapsed, it turned into a pure light rain of willpower, which was swallowed up by Lin Sun's body. In an instant, Lin Sun's soul was clear and his mind was smooth, as if he had absorbed a great tonic. His soul and state of mind produced a wonderful and obvious transformation. It turns out that I can get such benefits by defeating the willpower left by a powerful figure in ancient times. Lin Sun's pupils brightened. Far away, the gray-robed man saw all this and couldn't help but be stunned. He had been in charge of this place for 8,000 years and had long seen the horror of the forbidden field. He could even clearly recognize that the willpower of the man with a crown was comparable to that of a person at the second level of the Emperor realm. But now, in the contest of willpower and state of mind, he lost to a quasi-emperor Ju Fu. No wonder his lord didn't let him stop or help. This boy is really a monster. The gray-robed man sighed with emotion. But even so, the gray-robed man was still not optimistic about Lin Sun. This was just the beginning. There were as many as 36 willpower in the forbidden field, among which there were some terrifying and ruthless ones. The gray-robed man clearly remembered that there was a fragment of willpower in the shape of a big cauldron, which vaguely had the supreme power to suppress the universe and suppress the ages. The willpower of the big cauldron was also the most terrifying willpower. At the same time, Lin Sun finally had the opportunity to observe the forbidden field where he was. This was a blood-red world filled with boundless blood mist. It was impossible to tell the direction when one looked around, as if one had been banished into a world of fog. Vaguely, one could see the power of order shrouding the world, turning into a mysterious force that completely shrouded the world. Soon, Lin Sun also saw some figures, all like illusions, looming in the blood-red mist in the distance. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun did not force his way in. He stopped and began to restore his physical strength while waiting. One's state of mind and will would also be affected by physical strength. When one's physical strength was weak, one's state of mind and will would be shaken and all kinds of distracting thoughts would arise. It was just like when a person was sick, his state of mind and spirit would be dispirited. For Lin Sun, replenishing his physical strength at this moment was equivalent to preparing for the next battle. The purpose was to ensure that his state of mind and willpower would not be affected by his physical strength. Not long after, a shadow swept out from the blood-red mist. It was a beautiful blue figure with a graceful figure. She must have been extremely beautiful when she was alive and had a peerless elegance. But at this moment it was only a wisp of willpower, appearing illusory, and it was impossible to see her face clearly. Swish! As soon as she appeared, she waved her hand and slashed out a sword chi. Lin Sun fought against it and was sent flying in the blink of an eye. His body was not injured, but his state of mind and spirit had a feeling of being torn apart by a flying sword. This woman is stronger than the man with the crown. Lin Sun took a deep breath. His mind was clear and ethereal, and his willpower was as firm as a mountain. The previous battle had made him adapt to this different kind of fighting. Boom! In the blood-red world, Taoist light flowed and roared constantly. During the battle, Lin Sun's state of mind and willpower were like an unparalleled Taoist sword, fighting with the blue figure with all his strength. This kind of fighting. It was like refining a sword, but this sword was made of one's own willpower and mind. If one couldn't hold on, the sword would be broken and the person would die. If one held on, it would be the scene of the sword being sharpened. After a long time, Lin Sun, whose mind and willpower had suffered many devastating bombardments, finally defeated his opponent with a pale face. Boom! The blue figure turned into a rain of pure willpower. Lin Sun, who was physically and mentally exhausted, was bathed in the rain of light. His mind and willpower seemed to be bathed in the warm spring rain, getting an unprecedented nourishment and transformation. That taste caused him to have a feeling of being intoxicated by it, and every single pore on his body emitted a feeling of extreme pleasure. The second one, in the distance, the eyes of the man in gray flickered. In this case, this boy's state of mind and willpower are comparable to those at the peak of the second level of the Emperor realm. I don't know where his lord found such a freak. The man in gray had been guarding this place for 8,000 years, which was equivalent to being isolated from the world. He had no idea that Lin Sun's name had long been like the sun in the sky, whether in the dark world or other worlds of the starry ancient path. However, even if he didn't know this, with his many years of cultivation experience, he could still judge that such a heaven-defying genius was absolutely rare in the world. Thinking of this, the man in gray couldn't help but cherish the talent, and couldn't help reminding, "My young friend, you have proved your strength. If you persist, there will be no turning back. At that time, there will only be two results. Either you break through the forbidden field or die. There is no turning back when climbing the Great Way. Senior, don't worry. I don't care about life and death." Lin Sun's voice came out. He was seizing the time to restore his strength. Alas! The man in gray sighed, knowing that it was futile to persuade him again. After half an hour, the third figure of willpower appeared. It was a majestic figure bathed in silver thunderbolts, like a god in charge of heaven's thunder punishment, full of supreme destructive momentum. Lin Sun fought with it for a full day before he defeated it. At this time, Lin Sun's mind and willpower were on the verge of collapse. It couldn't be described as mental and physical exhaustion. His whole body was in a state of muddle-headedness and vague consciousness. Although his body was intact, because of the great physical consumption, every inch of his skin was sore and swollen, as if filled with lead. He sat silently with his legs crossed. After the silver thunderbolt willpower was defeated, the pure willpower derived from it was absorbed by his body crazily and greedily, which made his state of mind and willpower produce an extremely subtle change. But Lin Sun had no time to enjoy all this. He needed to restore his strength as soon as possible before the next opponent appeared. If Lin Sun guessed right, the fourth opponent would appear after half an hour like the previous ones. This also meant that the time left for him to recover was only half an hour. Sure enough, after the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the fourth opponent appeared. Chapter 22-21. Tai Chi diagram divided yin and yang, clear and turbid, black and white were distinct. With the appearance of the Taoist-robed man, the Tai Chi diagram rotated, showing a kind of perfect and immortal charm. Lin Sun's pupils shrank. This opponent was obviously much stronger than the previous ones. But Lin Sun didn't flinch. At this moment, as long as he showed the slightest intention of retreat in his mind, he would be targeted by the opponent like a huge flaw. Because this sort of unconventional battle was a competition of the strength of one's state of mind and willpower. Kill! Lin Sun took the initiative to attack. Boom! Like a black and white millstone, the Tai Chi diagram crushed Lin Sun and crushed all his attack. There was no resistance at all. In the blink of an eye, Lin Sun felt as if his mind and soul had been restrained, and they were being fiercely crushed by the black and white millstone formed from the Taiji Dao diagram. The endless pain made Lin Sun's whole body tense and twisted. This kind of pain came from the soul, from the depths of the heart, and couldn't be suppressed at all. For a moment, Lin Sun felt that his every thought seemed to be suffering from endless destruction and torture. In the previous battles, every time he killed an opponent, the willpower he absorbed made Lin Sun's state of mind and willpower of his soul stronger. Up to now, he had defeated 3 opponents, and his mind and willpower had been improved 3 times. But even so, when fighting against the 4th opponent, he still seemed extremely weak. As time went by, Lin Sun's mind and soul were shaking violently. His willpower was like a mountain, but there were signs of collapse. "Can't hold on any longer?" The gray-robed man in the distance was nervous. He had been paying attention to Lin Sun's movements. When he saw this scene, his face couldn't help but change slightly. Boom! The battle was still going on. In other words, Lin Sun was suppressed by a Tai Chi diagram, constantly struggling and resisting. However, in the face of the Tai Chi diagram that was as stable as a boulder, all resistance seemed so powerless. As time went by, Lin Sun's resistance began to weaken. Lin Sun's resistance became weaker. If he didn't resist every once in a while, the gray-robed man would suspect that his state of mind and willpower had been crushed long ago. If this kid dies just like that, then it would be too much of a pity. The gray-robed man's heart burned with anxiety, and he couldn't help but want to lend a hand. But when he thought of the Lord's order, he didn't dare to act on his own. This made him extremely conflicted, and his expression became uncertain. Just as he was thinking, there was a sudden change in the forbidden field. Lin Sun, who had been firmly suppressed by the Tai Chi diagram and was constantly being crushed and bombarded, suddenly burst out a terrifying power as sharp as a sword. Boom! In the next moment, the Tai Chi symbol that was suppressing him was blasted apart by the punch, and it transformed into a rain of light that filled the sky. Kill! Looking at Lin Sun again, he suddenly came to the man in Taoist robe and raised his fist to kill him. From afar, it looked like a heavenly saber was slashing down furiously. In the blink of an eye, the Taoist-robed man's body was blasted apart. Lin Sun stood where he was, panting. His face was pale, but his eyes were full of surging fighting intent. That was an indomitable will to fight. At this moment, his body was numb, and his mind and willpower were like porcelain that was about to be broken. But a new enlightenment came to his heart. It turned out that the real meaning of fighting Saint method was the use of the mind and willpower. With the root of fighting in the heart, the willpower would be invincible. After a moment of silence, Lin Sun sat cross-legged, devouring the willpower all over the sky, and restoring his seriously consumed physical strength. He didn't notice that in the distance, the gray-robed man was in a trance, and there was an uncontrollable shock spreading quietly between his eyebrows. Several days passed in a hurry. In these days, Lin Sun was like a copper pea that could not be steamed, boiled, hammered, flattened or fried. Every time he fought, he almost exhausted all his potential. His state of mind and willpower were destroyed to the point of collapse. But at the end of each fight, he could always reverse the situation and defeat his opponent. His tenacity and indomitable posture was like an immortal mountain from ancient times to the present, and after each fight, his mind and willpower would get a kind of extreme sublimation and transformation. Nirvana in destruction, transformation in life and death. Half a month later, Lin Sun defeated the 10th opponent. His body was like a soft mud, and his mind was vague and muddled. 1 month later, Lin Sun defeated the 18th opponent. So far, half of the willpower in the forbidden field had been killed. The gray-robed man looked at this scene in a daze, and his mind was a little numb. Over the past month, he had witnessed almost every fight of Lin Sun. Every time, it was like a life-and-death fight, thrilling. Every time, when the gray-robed man thought Lin Sun was about to fall, Lin Sun's performance broke his expectation and strongly reversed the inevitable defeat. Shock, doubt, trance, disbelief. Over the past month, the gray-robed man's mind had also undergone unprecedented turbulence and changes. Until now, he was really a little numb. Taking a deep breath, the gray-robed man took out a jade slip, recorded the news here one by one, and sent it out. Every 10 days he would do this, because outside the purgatory of darkness, there were also people nervously watching what was happening here. In the forbidden field, there are 36 willpower left by the ancient mighty. In half a month, Child Lin has defeated 10 willpower. Outside the purgatory of darkness, Qing Ying said, "Now, it has been a month since he entered the forbidden field. I don't know how he is now. Even if he doesn't die, he will be skinned." Big Yellow said without thinking, "That ghastly place, how could it be possible for just anyone to pass through?" Big Yellow still remembered that he had broken into it a long time ago, but he was tortured to death. He cried for his father and mother, but there was no response. Later, when he felt that he was going to die, he was fished out by Tower Master Bronze Sparrow. From then on, whenever the words, "Purgatory of Darkness," were mentioned, Big Yellow would subconsciously tighten his tail. Whenever the Tao Forbidden Field was mentioned, Big Yellow would recall its unbearable and tragic experience. Here comes the news. The drunkard next to him suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed a jade slip, which was the news about Lin Sun's fight in the Forbidden Field from the gray-robed man. "Have a look." Qing Ying and Big Yellow paid close attention to it. After reading the contents of the jade slip, Qing Ying's fair face under the blood umbrella couldn't help showing a look of relief. It was the best news that Lin Sun didn't die. As for the battle record, it was not important. But Big Yellow was very concerned. When he saw that Lin Sun had killed half of the willpower, his eyes almost fell out. Once again, he vividly interpreted the essence of dumbfounded. In just a month, he defeated half of his opponent. Back then, when Master entered this forbidden field, it took him nearly a year to come out. The drunkard murmured, "Doesn't this mean that if he can really stick to the end, he is very likely to break Master's record?" Qing Ying next to him was also excited. Like Lin Sun, she was brought up by Master Lu. Although there was a big age gap between them, for Qing Ying, Lin Sun was like a younger brother. It was because she admired Master Lu too much, and regarded him as a father, that she had a special feeling for Lin Sun. Now, she couldn't help but feel proud of Lin Sun's outstanding performance. "Wait, it's just half of the battle." Big Yellow held back for a long time before he uttered such a sentence. It was the first time that he, as arrogant as he was, felt that his dignity was hit. Because when he entered the Forbidden Field, not only was his battle record far less than Lin Sun's, but he was also ravaged so much that he almost doubted his life 2 months later. Lin Sun defeated the 28th opponent. From this day on, Lin Sun, who had been tempered for a long time, burst out unprecedented power like a well-tempered sword. It should be known that when Lin Sun defeated 28 opponents before, he also devoured and absorbed the power of 28 willpower, which changed his state of mind and willpower 28 times. Now, his mind and willpower had long been immersed in an extreme and pure fighting instinct, without any thoughts or distractions. In addition to fighting, he was recovering his physical strength. Like a puppet whose soul had left its body, he had forgotten everything around him. What's more, he didn't even notice what kind of amazing change was taking place in the power he exerted. It was also this amazing change that changed the previous battle situation. Like a sharp blade, he defeated his opponents with irresistible force. 3 months later, Lin Sun defeated the 35th opponent. His state of mind and willpower changed for the 35th time at this moment. His whole figure faintly showed a kind of momentum of, "My heart is immortal even if the world collapses, and my will is eternal even if the world collapses." The gray-robed man in the distance, as early as many days ago, could no longer sit still. He stood up like a clay statue. No words could describe his mood at this moment. From the initial worry, doubt, and puzzlement, he gradually felt surprised, until he became numb because of the shock and became in a trance because of disbelief. At this time, the gray-robed man's mind had been completely attracted by Lin Sun's every move. He never thought that a Jushi quasi-emperor could persist in the Forbidden Field for so long. What's more, he didn't expect that such a young man could break through the Forbidden Field with only one last pass, At this moment, all the emotions and thoughts in his heart turned into an unprecedented tension and expectation. This last opponent was as terrifying as a big cauldron, and also the strongest willpower in this forbidden field. Lin Sun, could he pass this pass? P.S. Recently, there have been a lot of reactions that they couldn't find the public account of Goldfish. The detailed steps were as follows. Open WeChat, select the option of Public Account in the search, and then enter Xiaojinyu 233, which will appear, and then add the follower. Chapter 22:22. 3 months. The willpower left by Lin soon defeated 35 ancient mighty figures. When they got the news, Qing Ying, the drunkard and Goldie, who had been waiting outside the purgatory of darkness, were all stunned. This isn't a dream, right? Or is Lin Wu deceiving us? Goldie shouted. He couldn't wait to rush into the purgatory of darkness to have a look. In the past 3 months, the gray-robed man, Lin Wu Battle Emperor, would spread the news of Lin soon breaking through the forbidden field every 10 days. Every time, Big Yellow would shudder with fear and be dumbfounded. Until now, when he heard that Lin Sun was only 1 step away from breaking through the forbidden field, he was so impatient that he wanted to know the truth, as if 100 claws were scratching his heart. Lin Wu dare not lie about such things. Don't forget that these news are to be submitted to his lord. How dare he falsify it? The drunkard took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Anyway, it is foreseeable that Lin Sun will succeed or fail in this one move." Qing Ying was inexplicably nervous. She had read many ancient records and learned that in the forbidden field, a willpower evolved into a big cauldron was the most terrible existence. The Tower Master of Bronze Sparrow Tower had also been suppressed by this big cauldron, but he finally succeeded in walking out of the forbidden field by some unknown method. Of course, Qing Ying also hoped that Lin Sun could pass through smoothly like his second senior brother, but he was still not at ease. "Then we can only wait here," Goldie lamented. Big Yellow sighed. It really wanted to take a look, but unfortunately, it could not enter the first 9 levels based on its abilities at the moment. In that secret realm, Zhong Qiu couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the latest news. 3 months? At this instant, a wisp of surprise surged into his heart because this had completely exceeded his expectations. In other words, he didn't expect that Lin Sun's performance could be better than what he had imagined. Things are different now. The new generation replaces the old. If it were you in the past, I'm afraid you wouldn't be proud in front of Lin Sun at all. She sat on one side and said indifferently. Her graceful figure was surrounded by mysterious light rain, ethereal and holy like a dream. Her words were undoubtedly a warning to Zhong Qiu. However, Zhong Qiu smiled disapprovingly and said, "If he behaves like me in the past, how could he be qualified to become the last successor of Mount Fangsuan?" He paused for a moment and continued. "Besides that, the more outstanding his performance is, the more I should be proud of him. After all, in name, I'm his second senior brother." His voice was calm, but it was filled with pride. She glanced at him and said, "Does this mean that you have already acknowledged him?" Zhong Qiu avoided the topic and only said, "Back then, in order to deal with a giant cauldron's will in the Tao Forbidden Field, I paid an extremely heavy price. In the end, I only managed to gain its approval and was allowed to leave. I hope that he can defeat that giant cauldron's will. Help you wash away your shame?" Xi's words were very sharp. Zhong Qiu couldn't help but be startled. "This is just a test." She smiled faintly. "He will definitely be able to make you feel proud." "What do you mean by making me proud?" Zhong Qiu felt that his pride had been challenged. This is what he should do as a junior brother. She couldn't help but laugh. This prideful fellow was really stubborn. In the Tao Forbidden Field, Lin Sun, who was meditating, suddenly opened his eyes. Then, he saw his final opponent, a giant cauldron. It had 3 legs and 2 handles, and a bronze radiance flowed around it. The mouth of the cauldron spewed chaotic qi as it floated there, giving off a might that could sweep across the heavens and suppress the ages. Lin soon felt suffocated in that instant. Just how terrifying was the willpower left behind by an ancient powerhouse? It was so terrifying that just one look at it would cause one's mind to be shaken, and one's willpower to feel despair. "I can give you time to recover to your peak state," an emotionless voice came from the giant cauldron's will. This was the first willpower that Lin Sun had encountered that seemed to possess intelligence. Furthermore, it was in the shape of a cauldron. After a moment of silence, Lin Sun stood up from the ground and said, "There's no need. After defeating you, I still have to head to the 9th floor." The giant cauldron floated in the air, flowing with a misty light. It was like the supreme heavenly Tao, and its might was unimaginably strong. "For countless years, no one has been able to defeat me," it spoke in a calm voice, as if it was narrating an extremely normal fact. "But this is only the 8th floor. As far as I know, there are 18 floors in the purgatory of darkness." Lin Sun's expression was calm, neither sad nor happy. As long as one has the cultivation of the Emperor realm, one can directly enter the lower 9 floors. For countless years, as long as one wants to pass through this floor, no one is my opponent. The giant cauldron's will did not seem to be in a hurry. Its voice was calm, as if it was chatting. This was undoubtedly an absolutely conceited attitude. "Wasn't there one in the ancient times?" Lin Sun asked casually. He was referring to the second senior brother, Zhongqiu. The giant cauldron's will said, "That person only obtained my approval, but he couldn't defeat me." Lin Sun fell into a rare silence. So, even the second senior brother couldn't defeat this cauldron? Then, Lin Sun suddenly raised his head and revealed a faint smile. "I'll be the first person to defeat you since the ancient times. What do you think?" These words made the giant cauldron's will silent for a moment, and then it said, "From now on, I'll give you a chance to fight with me." Lin Sun laughed. "You didn't give it to me. I took it on my own initiative. You have to be clear about this." He was very clear that from the moment the giant cauldron opened its mouth until now, every word it said was like an invisible suppression. If he agreed to fight with the giant cauldron after recovering to his peak, it would undoubtedly be equivalent to doubting his own combat strength and thinking that it was impossible for him to be a match for the giant cauldron's will. As long as this thought appeared and was put into action, even if his physical strength recovered to its peak, his state of mind and willpower would definitely not be invulnerable. It was the same for every conversation that followed. The giant cauldron's will didn't seem to make a move, but as long as there was a trace of fear, hesitation, concession, or fluke in the conversation, it would imperceptibly affect his state of mind. That was why Lin Sun behaved so strongly. This was a kind of momentum, but also a silent contest of willpower and state of mind. That was why Lin Sun behaved so strongly. This was a kind of momentum, but also a silent contest of willpower and state of mind. In fact, it was even more dangerous and impossible to guard against than a pure battle. Therefore, Lin Sun didn't intend to give the giant cauldron a chance to speak and directly attack. Bang! He took a step forward with the might of a fiend god, and his mind and will were unprecedentedly concentrated and condensed, causing him to faintly reveal the aura of perfection like a full moon in the clear sky. "You're really not bad. Your mind and will can be said to be invulnerable, but you utterly don't know what willpower is." When the voice of the giant cauldron resounded out, the scene before Lin Sun's eyes changed abruptly. He felt as if he was imprisoned within a boundless abyss. His surroundings were boundless, without a boundary, without a heaven or earth, and it was completely empty without a single thing. This is the strength of willpower. It's soundlessly capable of suppressing and affecting your mind, causing you to fall into the world of my willpower. The voice of the giant cauldron's will resounded in the boundless world of nothingness. It was indistinct and without the slightest fluctuation of emotion, and it was like the god of creation was issuing a decree. Lin Sun glanced at the surroundings and sensed in meditation, Yet he noticed that this supposedly illusory world was utterly unable to see the slightest flaw. This caused his expression to instantly become heavy to the extreme, and he felt a severe threat. A world of willpower? Lin Sun really didn't understand it at all. This allowed him to realize how terrifying the will of the giant cauldron was. Right at this moment, the voice of the giant cauldron resounded out once more. "In my eyes, you're an ant." After that, Lin Sun noticed that he'd really transformed into an extremely tiny ant that stood blankly in this boundless world, and he seemed to be exceptionally weak. If it wasn't for Lin Sun being prepared since long ago, merely this scene would have been able to catch him off guard and cause his mind to be shaken. A large hand appeared and pinched Lin Sun, who'd transformed into an ant, on the tip of its fingers. Instantly, Lin Sun found it difficult to breathe, and his body suffered an unprecedented pressure as if he would be crushed to death at any moment. But even in such an extremely dangerous situation, Lin Sun still maintained a trace of clarity in his mind and will. His Tao heart was like a blade, and his will was like a rock. Illusion, all of this is an illusion, and it's an illusion created from the impact my mind suffered. Lin Sun reminded and persisted like this, and his state of mind that was like a blade slaughtered the panic, disorder, despair, and other emotions in the depths of his heart. But his body that had transformed into an ant was still pinched by the large hand, and his entire body showed signs of collapsing as if he was about to drown in the deep sea. This was completely and absolute suppression in terms of will and state of mind. When the mind is deceived, all falsehoods are true. The voice of the cauldrons will sound it again. In this world of will, I can transform into all things and control life and death with a single thought. What else do you have to defeat me? These words floated in the boundless heaven and earth, revealing supreme majesty, and indisputable and slanderous. But after listening to these words, Lin Sun's eyes suddenly lit up. All falsehoods are true? No. When falsehoods are true, truth is falsehood. Where there's nothing, there's nothing. Boom. In an instant, Lin Sun's state of mind and will seemed to produce copious and irresistible power, and all falsehoods in his field of vision vanished without a trace, like melting snow and rain. The large hand that was like God was gone, and he recovered his appearance from the form of an ant. He once again stood in this boundless world that seemed boundless, borderless, and devoid of all things. His black eyes were clear, and his eyebrows were ethereal. He stood with his hands behind his back, and his whole body emitted a transcendent aura as he said indifferently, "True and false, illusory and illusory. I only know that I'm here, and it's true. This little bit of ability of yours is unable to deceive my heart." The will of the cauldron went silent, seeming to be surprised and astounded, and it didn't speak for a long time. All of this had indeed exceeded its expectations. After the first tribulation of oblivion came to an end, in the countless years until now, Lin Sun was the first opponent that was capable of resisting its world of will. The heavens and the earth became even more silent, and there wasn't a trace of sound any longer. Lin Sun's state of mind wasn't as heavy as it was at the beginning. Chapter 22-23. In ancient times, there was a mighty figure who entered a dream one day and turned into a butterfly, flying through the flowers and plants. When he woke up, he was confused. Which was real and which was illusion? Did the butterfly transform into me, or did I transform into the butterfly? This was the confusion between the real and the illusory. Many years ago, Lin Sun entered the heaven accessing place and experienced a reincarnation with another identity in the 9th test of Green Cloud Path. See yourself. The reincarnation lasted for more than 20 years. But Lin Sun experienced more than 20 years of meditation and saw through the illusory and saw himself. As the saying goes, when the false is true, the true is also false. In cultivation, the truth was a kind of understanding of one's own body. She said at that time, "This tribulation is called questioning the heart and seeking truth." It points directly to the state of mind of the Great Way. Suffering from the torment of the true and the illusory of the Great Way is the most terrifying. If you cannot break through this tribulation, your Great Way will turn into an illusion and vanish. She asked, "What did you comprehend in the end?" Lin soon answered, "I am the truth." Just like at this moment, after being trapped in the world of will, Lin soon saw through the illusory and discerned the true and the illusory. Finally, he preserved the truth of his state of mind and will and resolved the tribulation. But your state of mind is still being suppressed and affected. When you can walk out of my world of will, perhaps you will be able to defeat me. After a long time, the voice of the giant cauldron sounded again. It was emotionless, but its words had already recognized Lin Sun as an opponent. "I will," Lin Sun said indifferently. With a turn of his mind, his entire body turned into a cauldron that seemed to contain all the Tao in the world and suppress the past, present, and future. This was formed from his state of mind and will. Rumble the next moment, he fused all his cultivation and methods into the cauldron. The cauldron also rotated and rumbled, reflecting countless grand visions. There were true dragons soaring in the sky, water and fire fusing, Tai Chi circulation, immortality, there were surging winds and thunder, annihilation of stars, reincarnation of all things, and changes of the world. A giant cauldron developed the Great Way and all methods. In this empty and borderless world of will, there suddenly appeared the images of mountains and rivers, the sun, the moon and stars, the four seasons, and the changes of all things. Creating something out of nothing. You are a Jushi quasi-emperor, how could you possibly see into this realm? The voice of the gigantic cauldrons will resounded, and it revealed a rare trace of fluctuation. It seemed to feel shock and disbelief. Only he was clearly aware of how taboo it was to create something from nothing, and it was related to a supreme realm of the Grand Tao. Now Lin Sun's state of mind had already peeped into a trace of the essence of this realm and deduced the essence of making something out of nothing in its world of will, which was undoubtedly incredible. In reality, it wasn't just the will of the great cauldron that was shocked. When Lin Sun comprehended a trace of the essence of creating something out of nothing in the 8th pass of Green Cloud Path, Tao Fusion, she was extremely shocked. Similarly, in the murderous blood battlefield, in the mulberry forest, and in front of the Tao Palace of Myriad Tribulations, the young man with golden cicada was also shocked by Lin Sun's understanding of creating something out of nothing. At this moment, Lin Sun condensed the furnace of the great Tao with his mental state and willpower, and it developed the scene of the sun, moon, mountains, rivers, and the cycle of the 4 seasons in this world of willpower, and it faintly revealed the profundity of creating something from nothing. Of course, all of this was formed by his mental state and willpower, but being able to achieve this could already be said to be world-shaking and world-shaking. Lin Sun paid no attention to the surprised voice of the cauldron's will. His mental state and willpower were unprecedentedly focused, and he deduced his cultivation in the furnace. Be meticulous in all directions, and travel 1,000 miles in the mind. Boom! The light of the Tao whistled, and the divine brilliance rose. The furnace revolved to the extreme, and the rumbling sound gradually became low and heavy, until the end, even a trace of sound could not be heard, and it was completely silent. However, the power became more and more terrifying. Every time it revolved, it could easily tear apart the power of the world of willpower within an area of 30,000 meters, causing a vacuum to form around Lin Sun's body. It felt as if he was the supreme lord of creation within this vacuum zone, and he was using his mental state and will to create and deduce all the changes in the profundities of the universe. The furnace evolved creation, and all phenomena were born. Gradually, the furnace that revolved soundlessly became even more ethereal and translucent, and it arrived at the limit. Every single time the furnace revolved, it seemed as if various profundities were being born and created, causing it to be dazzling and profound to the extreme. When this silent, dignified and bright power of the furnace reached the extreme, the speed of its rotation became slower and slower. Every time it revolved, it was like an ant dragging a huge mountain. Until later, the furnace transformed by Lin Sun's body and mind suddenly stopped. It was also at this moment. An endless and terrifying pressure came from all directions of this world of will. This was an attack from the will of the cauldron. Everything Lin Sun showed at this moment had made it feel a serious threat, and for the first time, it chose to take the initiative to kill. Then, just as the overwhelming pressure arrived, the originally still furnace transformed by Lin Sun suddenly trembled. Boom! An earth-shaking roar, like the first thunder when the chaos was first created. Then, the whole world of willpower exploded. The will of the cauldron reappeared, 3 feet and 2 ears, filled with chaotic bronze chi, but at this moment it seemed incomparably shocked. It could not imagine that it could really break its world of willpower, and that it was only a Ju Shi quasi-emperor. I said, after defeating you, I still have to go to the 9th floor, Lin Sun's voice sounded. A furnace appeared, containing the charm of all Tao, but then it turned into a great abyss, swallowing the will of the cauldron. It was immeasurably vast and immeasurably deep. No! The will of the cauldron finally panicked, and let out an angry roar. It was originally like a supreme ruler, but there was no longer that heaven-suppressing majesty. In a flash, the great abyss, like an eternal night, engulfed the will of the cauldron and the surrounding area. Boom! In the forbidden field, there was an unprecedented turbulence. In the blood-red world, a great abyss rotated, producing a terrifying power that could engulf the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Hey! At this moment, the gray-robed man stiffened, shocked to see that an indescribably terrifying aura was sweeping across the forbidden field, spreading in all directions. Wherever it passed, the sky collapsed, the earth collapsed, and the heaven and earth seemed to be crushed, disrupted, and destroyed. The entire forbidden field, as if it had been ruthlessly rubbed by a giant hand, was in a state of devastation. The gray-robed man's heart skipped a beat. However, before he could even react, the Tao restriction domain that had existed in the 8th level of the hidden purgatory of darkness for countless years actually rumbled and exploded into pieces at this moment. Rumble, the unparalleled turbulence of power swept out, causing the heaven and earth of the 8th floor to shake violently. Bang! Even though he had already operated his cultivation, the gray-robed man was still shaken by the terrifying destructive power, and staggered back more than 10 steps before he could stabilize his body, and his face had already become solemn and shocked. The Tao Seal field was actually destroyed? And all this, was it done by that young man Lin Sun? An indescribable shock surged in the gray-robed man's heart, surging and rolling. He clearly remembered that the will of the enormous cauldron was simply like the ruler of the forbidden field, and no one had been able to defeat it in the countless years of the past. Even the master of Pavilion Copper Sparrow had merely obtained its acknowledgement in order to pass through the forbidden field. Yet now, not to mention the will of the enormous cauldron, even the forbidden field had been destroyed. When he thought up to here, the gray-robed man was dazed. In the beginning, he doubted and worried about Lin Sun's ability, and he'd advised Lin Sun to leave. Later on, the strength Lin Sun revealed had gradually conquered his heart, and it caused him to feel shock, astonishment, and disbelief. At this moment, the gray-robed man only had a single feeling: bewilderment. It was like all his knowledge had been pushed to the peak, all his estimations had been destroyed, and his body and mind suffered an unprecedented blow. This caused his body to tremble uncontrollably. It was too unbelievable indeed, and it was simply like an unprecedented legend had been born before his eyes. After a long time, the aura of destruction within the forbidden field had finally vanished completely, whereas the ground in an area of 5,000 kilometers had been covered in ravines and desolation. If one looked carefully, the horrifying ravines on the ground were still circulating with strands of the aura of destruction, and it was horrifying. On the other hand, Lin Sun stood there motionlessly like a clay statue at the center of the forbidden field. Even though he didn't speak a single word, he was like an immovable divine mountain that emanated an unshakable aura. "Lin Sun, are you all right?" the gray-robed man asked. There was no reply. The gray-robed man frowned and separated a strand of his divine sense to investigate. However, it hadn't even come into contact with Lin Sun's body when it was obstructed by an invisible force of will. It was even to the extent that if he was a little slower, then this strand of his divine sense would have been directly shattered. This scene caused the gray-robed man's heart to jerk, and it was even to the extent that he didn't dare act rashly. If news of this were to spread to an old fellow like him, then he would surely die from embarrassment. But it just so happened that he was extremely solemn and serious at this moment because he found that this young man Lin Sun was too surprising. He was simply like a freak that couldn't be judged by common sense at all. With a cultivation at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm, he broke into the 8th level of the purgatory of darkness, and after 3 months, he defeated the force of will left behind by 36 ancient almighty figures and destroyed the entire forbidden field. In the countless years since ancient times, which peerless quasi-emperor could accomplish such a feat? Only Lin Sun could. "My lord, really found an extraordinary figure." The gray-robed man couldn't help but sigh with emotion at the words he repeated before. But at this moment it wasn't just admiration but a kind of shock, a new recognition. Just like this, Lin Sun stood on the spot for 3 days, and he was constantly refining and absorbing the pure force of will left behind by the cauldron. 3 days later, Lin Sun seemed as if he had come alive from a clay statue, and his thin and tall figure was suffused with a vast and unparalleled imposing manner. It was as if he was entangled with the profound principles of the Great Way, and he deduced a majestic power that was like an abyss and an ocean. P.S. Some children still don't know the time of the great outbreak. By the way, it's next Thursday. Chapter 22-24. He's changed. The man in gray muttered. 3 days of time was just a blink of an eye to him, so when he saw Lin Sun recover, he instantly noticed that this young man's aura had undergone a tremendous change. It was a kind of aura of deduction and creation, a kind of exuberant power. Now, it appeared in Lin Sun's will, making him like a creator. It seemed that he could deduce thousands of mysteries as long as his mind moved. The old man in gray was truly unable to believe that a young man who hadn't advanced into the emperor realm could possibly grasp such terrifying willpower. This was simply the first such unfathomable freak he'd encountered since he started cultivating, and it simply broke his understanding of quasi-emperor Ju Feng. Lin Sun was sensing the changes in his body. 3 days of time allowed him to refine the pure energy that belonged to the cauldron's will, and his state of mind and willpower had both reached an unprecedented level. The most shocking change was that his soul had transformed in his sea of consciousness, and it had transformed into a soul that was shaped like a cauldron of the Grand Tao. The soul was a cauldron of willpower. In the depths of his state of mind, an acupoint that was like an abyss had appeared. The heart acupoint was an abyss of heart force. This caused Lin Sun to be stunned and dazed. The soul and willpower were unique to Emperor Realm figures, and only existences that had stepped onto the path of Emperor Realm could condense a will dharma within their soul. For example, the 36 fragments of willpower that were scattered in the Tao containment field were all left behind by great ancient figures, and they'd experienced the corrosion of countless years and remained until now. If they weren't trapped in the Tao containment field, these fragments of willpower could even awaken their instincts and come back to life. And this was the terrifying aspect of the soul and willpower. Simply speaking, those fragments of willpower were the will dharma of those great ancient figures. Yet now, at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm and under the circumstances that he hadn't stepped foot into the emperor realm, Lin Sun had condensed a will dharma within his sea of consciousness. Moreover, it was a cauldron that contained all the chaos in the world and suppressed the past, present, and future. In the past, Lin Sun had never heard of any quasi-emperor realm figure being able to accomplish this. Without a doubt, this could be said to be unprecedented and unique in the world. At the same time, Lin Sun was surprised by the abyss of heart force in his heart acupoint. The heart aperture was the foundation of a Tao heart. It was its source, and it was the most profound and mysterious. Unlike will and dharma, Lin Sun had never heard of any cultivator in the world who could condense a vision in his heart aperture. Is it because I have comprehended the mystery of creating something out of nothing? Lin Sun vaguely guessed something, but he was not sure. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun discarded all distracting thoughts. No matter what, this experience has allowed my state of mind and will to reach an unprecedented level of perfection. If I want to transform again, I'm afraid I can only achieve it by stepping into the Emperor realm. While thinking, Lin Sun turned his head and looked into the distance. Senior, can I enter the 9th level of the Purgatory of Darkness? Lin Sun asked with a smile. The gray-robed man quickly waved his hand and said, Don't call me senior. You and I can call each other as equals. My Tao name is Ling Wu, and people call me Battle Emperor Ling Wu. He paused for a moment and continued. Young friend, there's no need to be in a hurry to leave. There's another secret to the 9th level. If you don't mind, I can introduce it to you. Of course, Lin Sun didn't mind and agreed with a smile. Battle Emperor Ling Wu invited Lin Sun to sit on the ground and passed a pot of wine to Lin Sun. He sighed and said, Young friend, your performance today has really opened my eyes. Even now, I still can't calm down. Lin Sun was keenly aware that Battle Emperor Ling Wu's attitude towards him had undergone a drastic change. Battle Emperor Ling Wu was no longer as dignified as before. Instead, Battle Emperor Ling Wu had become gentle and warm. Battle Emperor Ling Wu didn't even bother to conceal his admiration for Lin Sun. Brother, you're too kind. Lin Sun took the pot of wine and smiled as he drank with Battle Emperor Ling Wu. Since Battle Emperor Ling Wu didn't allow him to call him senior, Lin Sun would call him brother. After all, an elder was like a brother. Soon, Lin Sun learned that thousands of years ago, there was a shocking change in the 9th level of the Purgatory of Darkness. An extremely strange forbidden land of lightning appeared. When the forbidden land of lightning appeared, all the ferocious spirits in the 9th level died in a single night. Generally speaking, only Emperor Realm cultivators had the ability to enter the 9th level because all the ferocious spirits in the 9th level possessed combat strength and intelligence comparable to Emperor Realm cultivators. However, such a group of ferocious spirits suddenly died. This strange change naturally attracted the attention of the Hidden Mist sect and the Copper Sparrow House. At that time, Battle Emperor Ling Wu and a group of Emperor Realm cultivators joined forces to enter the 9th level in an attempt to find out the truth. However, when they got close to the strange forbidden land of lightning, they were all blocked by a terrifying aura and couldn't take a single step forward. After a long period of observation, Battle Emperor Ling Wu and the others discovered that a spirit with supreme intelligence was most likely born in the depths of the forbidden land of lightning. Moreover, unlike the other ferocious spirits that had condensed intelligence, this spirit had no intention of harming cultivators. It had been hibernating in the depths of the forbidden land of lightning, appearing extremely mysterious and low-key. Speaking up to this point, a strange expression appeared on Battle Emperor Ling Wu's face. Later on, when we were about to leave, someone suddenly saw the faint shadow of a small tree in the depths of the lightning forbidden area. It was only 3 feet tall, and its entire body was as red as blood. Its bark was like metal, and it gave off an obscure icy luster. Its branches were bare, and they looked like blades. It's a pity that the little tree disappeared in a flash, never to be seen again. However, we all firmly believe that the little tree is very likely to be that spiritual body that possesses supreme intelligence. Hearing this, Lin Sun had a bold idea in his mind. Could that blood-red small tree be the Kunwu immortal tree? Realizing this, Lin Sun's heart was also lifted. According to the legend, the Kunwu immortal tree's trunk was like copper, and its branches and leaves were like divine swords hanging in the sky. It contained the innate essence of chaos fire, so wherever it appeared, there would be thunder and lightning. This was some of the mysteries of the Kunwu immortal tree that the old copper tree suppressed in the endless tower of the great Tao, told Lin Sun. Only the Emperor Realm ferocious spirit like the old copper tree, which was formed by a section of the Kunwu immortal tree's root, understood the Kunwu immortal tree best. Young friend, I'm not trying to persuade you not to go this time. It's just that there are no more ferocious spirits on the 9th floor. There's only a forbidden land of lightning left. There's no need to go there anymore. Battle Emperor Ling Wu continued. As for the 10th floor, it belongs to the category of the lower 9 floors. The order of heaven and earth there prevents anyone below the Emperor realm from entering. The meaning behind his words was obvious. The purgatory of darkness was no longer suitable for Lin Sun to continue his cultivation. It was time for him to leave. Brother, I want to take a look at the 9th floor, Lin Sun said as he stood up. Even if it's not for cultivation, I can still see the forbidden land of lightning. Battle Emperor Ling Wu was stunned. He smiled and asked, Are you unwilling to leave just like that? Not really. Lin Sun shook his head and was about to leave. Young friend, please wait. I'm actually very curious. With your current cultivation, why don't you go and attain the Emperor realm? Battle Emperor Ling Wu couldn't help but ask as Lin Sun was about to leave. This was also the biggest question in his heart. I just feel that it's not enough. I haven't reached my limit yet. Lin Sun's voice was still echoing in his ears, but he had already disappeared. Battle Emperor Ling Wu was in a daze for a long time. He couldn't help but sigh. Lin Sun's cultivation had already surpassed the Emperor realm. He had already killed the Emperor realm ferocious beast, but it wasn't enough? His state of mind and willpower had already destroyed the forbidden land of lightning, but it still wasn't enough? This brat is really a rare monster. Battle Emperor Ling Wu watched as Lin Sun's figure gradually disappeared. After thinking for a while, he took out a communication jade slip and spread the news that Lin Sun had defeated the Great Cauldron's willpower and destroyed the forbidden land of lightning. Outside the purgatory of darkness, the drunkard, Big Yellow, and Qing Ying stared blankly at the news that had just spread. They fell into a strange silence. After a long time, Big Yellow let out a mournful wail. How could that brat break the record set by our master? Can anyone tell me that this isn't real? His dog face was filled with resentment as if he had suffered a heavy blow. The drunkard and Qing Ying glanced at each other, and both of them didn't pay attention to this crazy guy. In my opinion, after this incident, Master will definitely approve of him, the drunkard said. Why would he need to acknowledge him? This is the truth, Qing Ying said. Her emotions were stirred up and she couldn't calm down. The drunkard thought for a while and decided to spread the news. They had to let their master know about this earth-shattering news as soon as possible. However, Big Yellow anxiously stopped him. Are you crazy? Our master is such a proud person. If he knows about this, how unhappy would he be? That brat is our master's junior brother. In my opinion, our master should be even more proud. After saying that, the drunkard spread the news. It's over. If our master is unhappy, he'll definitely vent his anger on me. This kind of thing has happened a lot in the past, Big Yellow wailed. The drunkard couldn't help but say, Don't worry, our master won't stew you. Before he could finish, Big Yellow howled and pounced on him. He broke all your records in 3 months and crushed the cauldron's will to avenge your humiliation. Now, if you face that junior brother of yours, can you still be proud? After he got the news, she was the first to speak, and his words were like knives. Zhong Qiu fell silent. She continued, When you think about it, it makes sense. The record from back then was broken. No one would be happy about it. Don't hold it in. If there's anything you're unhappy about, why don't you tell me? Do you want to hear it? Zhong Qiu finally spoke. She nodded. Zhong Qiu immediately roared with laughter. He was high-spirited and in high spirits. He laughed to the point the heavens and the earth trembled. He laughed to the point she was stunned on the spot and felt extremely surprised. That's what I want to say. Zhong Qiu spoke and roared with laughter. Ha 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 ha. His laughter was filled with pride. Chapter 22-25. The ninth level of Purgatory of Darkness. Violent bolts of lightning raged, and they were like numerous silver snakes that were thick like buckets that were dancing and roaring madly. The entire heavens and the earth were filled with lightning, and a strong aura of destruction that was almost material suffused every single inch of space. Looking carefully, this world was completely covered by lightning, and the deeper it was, the more powerful the lightning was. Up to the depths of the core, some lightning even evolved into the shape of swords, axes, which was extremely terrifying. Whoosh! A tall figure appeared, his clothes fluttering, his whole body bursting with Taoist light, and his every move splashed out bright sword qi, tearing up all the lightning in front of him. His movement was not fast, but there was an unparalleled momentum of its own, like a king of the sword walking, and wherever he passed, all things would retreat. This person was Lin Sun. During the 3 months of fighting in the Forbidden Field, Lin Sun's state of mind and will had undergone an unprecedented transformation, and his own combat strength had also been sublimated. It should be known that the soul was the origin of soul refining. Now that Lin Sun's soul had condensed the Dharma form of will, the power that erupted during the battle could even deter ordinary emperors and make them tremble with fear. In addition, the emergence of the Dharma form of will made Lin Sun's control of the Great Way and the use of martial arts during the battle had undergone earth-shaking changes. It could be said that although Lin Sun was still at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm, his combat strength had improved a lot compared to before. It was no problem for him to fight against the existences in the 3rd level of the emperor realm. For example, if he encountered a figure like the Silver Bat Ghost Emperor again, he could fight against the opponent even if he couldn't kill the opponent with his own combat strength. This kind of heaven-defying combat strength could simply be described as shocking, and if it was spread out it would definitely shock people to the ground. But for Lin Sun, it was still a little short of the real great perfection that he wanted. Because this was not his limit. Like now, his cultivation, state of mind, and willpower could all be called the real extreme of this realm, and there was no possibility of further improvement. But his power of the Great Way and martial arts hadn't really reached the extreme. For example, in martial arts cultivation, the inheritance of Taoism he mastered was extremely numerous. Although he had already integrated the profound meaning of them into his own Great Way furnace scripture, and could develop all kinds of Taoism in one furnace. However, there was still a long way to go before he could truly master them. The energy of the Grand Tao he possessed was the same as well. However, Lin Sun had a strong hunch that he was not far from becoming an emperor, and he might even take this step at any time. Just like now, Lin Sun felt a wonderful sign of restlessness in his mind while walking in the 9th level of the world of thunder and lightning. The lightning order here is making my cultivation restless. Maybe I can summon the monarch tribulation and advance to the martial monarch realm with a single thought? An idea popped up in Lin Sun's mind, but he soon discarded it. To Xiao Chen, becoming a martial emperor was something that he could fight for when his cultivation reached consummation. But this was not what he wanted. What he wanted was to become an emperor at the pinnacle. He wanted to become an emperor at the pinnacle, a path that had never been seen before in the past and present. Because of this, Lin Sun had been suppressing his cultivation and turning to temper the Great Tao and martial arts cultivation to temper his state of mind and willpower. Walking in the forbidden zone of thunder, the deeper he went, the greater the pressure. Even if Lin Sun's combat effectiveness had improved by leaps and bounds, he gradually began to feel a little tired. It was also at this moment, on a whim, Lin Sun could faintly feel that even if he suppressed his cultivation in less than half a year, or more than a year and a half, the monarch tribulation would inevitably come. This was a kind of unfathomable feeling, but it could be vaguely felt in the heart. It was very mysterious. This was a kind of perception of heaven's secrets by practitioners. When the cultivation reached the martial monarch realm, one could even calculate his own future by this reaction to heaven's secrets, which was extremely magical. Bang! 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 Bolts of terrifying lightning power descended from the sky. They were dazzling and as thick as pythons. Lin Sun's sword chi flowed around his body, splitting the thunderbolts, leaving only wisps of thunderbolts, which were guided by him and hammered on his body. Dazzling lights splashed, and the hit skin produced a numbing and painful feeling. When he was in the forbidden zone of thunder, he used the willpower to temper his mind and willpower. At this time, he tempered his body with the power of thunderbolt. Although it was dangerous and painful to do so, the tempering effect on the body was indeed obvious. Unfortunately, Lin Sun found that his body refining, chi refining and soul refining had already reached the extreme level after many attempts. Even if he tempered his body, he only felt some pain, but there was no improvement in cultivation. However, he cultivated the great Quietus Thunderbolt scripture, which could help him understand the mystery of thunderbolts described in this scripture faster in this world of thunderbolts. One day later, just when Lin Sun felt that the pressure had reached a point where he had to resist with all his strength, he saw a dazzling fiery red in the far distance. The sky and the earth were red, and the thunderbolts were like fire. It was like a torrent of thunderbolts falling from the sky, with magnificent and colorful fiery colors, completely covering that area. Vaguely, the power of the red thunderbolts could be seen turning into flying sabers, swords, axes, battle axes, bells, cauldrons, pagodas. Some thunderbolts turned into the sun, the moon and the stars, circulating in them. Lin Sun even saw phoenixes made of thunderbolts fluttering between heaven and earth, making clear sounds with the deterrent power of thunderbolt. It was like a country of thunderbolts, red as fire. The forbidden area of thunderbolts. At once, Lin Sun judged that this area should be the horrible place mentioned by Battle Emperor Lingwu. Was the Kunwu divine tree really hidden in it? As Lin Sun pondered, he took out the Great Way without end tower and released the old copper tree that was suppressed in it. The latter was dying, but at this moment its spirit was refreshed. This is Kunwu thunder fire. The old copper tree cried out excitedly. The thunderbolts intertwined between heaven and earth, and the flames raged, but for the old copper tree, it was like being in a fairyland. Lin Sun was fighting against the thunderbolts between heaven and earth. Seeing this, he attracted a stream of flame and thunderbolts and rushed towards the old copper tree. The latter was so excited that it almost flew up, waving its branches to absorb the flame and thunderbolts, and its dim body was covered with a layer of red luster. At this moment, it was as if it had eaten a mouthful of immortal nectar, showing a comfortable and intoxicated expression. So, the Kunwu divine tree is here? Lin Sun suddenly asked. The old copper tree answered without hesitation, it must be. Only the origin of the Kunwu divine tree can emit such pure Kunwu thunder fire. According to what it said, the thunderbolts that covered heaven and earth were called Kunwu thunder fire, intertwined with the power of the origin of thunderbolts, and only the Kunwu divine tree could control them. In short, Kunwu thunder fire was the origin of the Kunwu divine tree's great way. Lead the way. Lin Sun pointed to the thunder forbidden zone in the distance. The heaven and earth there were too terrifying, and the thunder law that covered it had evolved into all kinds of strange phenomena. Back when Battle Emperor Lingwu and the others arrived here, they were also blocked outside and could not enter. Lin Sun did not think that he could really be compared with Battle Emperor Lingwu now. However, with the old copper tree leading the way, it would be different. This emperor-level evil spirit and the Kunwu divine tree had the same origin, and it regarded this thunder world as a fairyland. It should not be difficult to enter the thunder forbidden zone. Me! The old copper tree's expression suddenly changed. If I go in, I will definitely be swallowed by the Kunwu divine tree. After all, my origin is a section of its roots. Before it could finish, it was interrupted by Lin Sun. If you help me, I won't watch you die. If you don't help me, you will die now. The old copper tree's expression changed, and after a while, it gritted its teeth and said, Taoism Pier, is what you said true? If I bring you in, will you really spare my life? Lin Sun did not hesitate, of course. The old copper tree no longer hesitated. It took a deep breath and walked forward. Its thick branches swayed like a big umbrella, covering all the power of the thunderbolts. Lin Sun walked under the umbrella cover, as if he was walking on flat ground, and his whole body felt relaxed. Along the way, he keenly noticed that the old copper tree was madly absorbing the power of the thunderbolts between heaven and earth. It was originally seriously injured and dying, but now it was full of vitality again. However, Lin Sun did not care. Even if the old copper tree recovered to its peak state, it was far from being his opponent. Soon, the two walked into the thunder forbidden zone. Boom! A fiery red Taoist sword formed by thunderbolts slashed at the old copper tree, diffusing the breath of destruction. The old copper tree trembled and staggered back. There was no doubt that this place made it feel extremely pressured. Seeing this, Lin Sun immediately took action. A furnace condensed by the law of Great Way emerged and flew across the sky. Bang! In a flash, the thunder-fire sword was crushed and turned into a rain of thunderbolts all over the sky. The old copper tree took the opportunity to rush up. Its branches spread and expanded, sweeping away the thunderbolts all over the sky. It was so comfortable that it almost moaned as if it had swallowed a great tonic. Taoism Pier, this is Kunwu Thunder Liquid. It has the magic of reviving the dead, and has an incredible magical effect on healing Taoist injuries. As the old copper tree spoke, a leaf flew down. On the leaf, there was a drop of thunderbolt-like liquid. It was crimson and crystal clear, exuding a strong breath of life. Thunderbolt-like liquid. Moreover, it was formed by the origin of Kunwu Thunderfire, intertwined with amazing breath of law. Lin Sun took out a jade bottle and collected this drop of Kunwu Thunder liquid. Then, he said, just one drop? You're so generous. The old copper tree was embarrassed and hurriedly said, Taoism Pier, rest assured. As long as we kill the thunderbolts here that can evolve into forms, we can collect a steady stream of Kunwu Thunder liquid. Lin Sun didn't say anything more. Not long after the two moved forward, a spear formed by Kunwu Thunderfire broke through the air. Thunder and lightning intertwined and flowed, flashing with a terrible murderous spirit that could destroy the world. Chapter 22-26. Puff! In the blink of an eye, the old copper tree was pierced by the thunder spear, causing it to howl in pain. Lin Sun took advantage of the situation and launched the lifeless seal to suppress it. The bronze color rumbled as the lifeless seal surged with monstrous killing and destruction chi, firmly suppressing the thunder spear. Ignoring the pain, the old bronze tree waved its dense branches and began to frantically refine the thunder battle spear that seemed to be imprisoned. Its origin was a root of the Kunwu divine tree. It was like a container that could contain the power of Kunwu Thunderfire contained in the thunder spear. In a flash, accompanied by an earth-shattering explosion, the thunder spear shattered and was absorbed and refined by the dense tentacle-like branches of the old copper tree. Soon, not only the old copper tree's injuries were healed, but his momentum was also 3 times stronger than before. He became vigorous and spirited. Clearly, refining this thunder battle spear had greatly benefited him. Taoism Pier, here are 3 drops of Kunwu Thunder liquid. Soon, the old copper tree distributed the spoils to Lin Sun. 3 drops. Lin Sun glanced at him. The old copper tree trembled and quickly explained, Taoism Pier, the thunder essence contained in the thunder spear can only refine 6 drops of Kunwu thunder liquid. I used 3 drops myself and left 3 drops for you. Lin Sun nodded and said, I'll take 8 and you take 2. The old copper tree was stunned and his heart was bleeding, but he dared not refute. Without Lin Sun's help, he could not fight against the various forms of the thunder rule alone. Similarly, without the old copper tree leading the way, the terrifying power in the thunder forbidden zone alone was enough to make Lin Sun unable to move. In short, the two could only cooperate now. Of course, Lin Sun had a greater advantage. Along the way there were many more attacks. Thunder Furnace, Thunder Spear, Thunder Saber, Thunder Gourd, all of them were bright red like fire, entwined with a terrible aura of destruction. The old copper tree must take the lead to attack each time, using his own power to attract the opponent. Lin Sun took advantage of the situation to suppress the opponent, and then the old copper tree would refine the opponent. Although there were many situations along the way, they were solved one by one. Not only did they harvest some Kunwu thunder liquid, but the cooperation between the two became more tacit as time went by. After half a day, as Lin Sun and the old bronze tree reached the depths of the thunder and lightning forbidden zone, the dangers they encountered became more and more terrifying. From time to time, there would be suns, moons, and stars formed by thunderbolts falling down and bombarding them. Just that aura alone was enough to make an ordinary great emperor feel despair. In the face of this situation, the old bronze tree felt both pain and joy. Although his power could not deal with these attacks, he could still attract them. It was like a flame that attracted moth. Therefore, every single time, it could only brace itself and charge forward. Every single time, it was struck by lightning until its entire body was smoking and its branches were broken. It was a miserable sight. Fortunately, Lin Sun didn't disappoint it. Every time it suffered a calamity, Lin Sun would launch an all-out attack and suppress those opponents formed from the laws of lightning. But even so, when they reached the depths of the thunder forbidden zone, both Lin Sun and the old bronze tree felt an unprecedented pressure. The opponent formed from the law of lightning was becoming more and more terrifying. Let's take a break. Up until now, he'd already consumed half of his physical strength. If he didn't recover soon, then when he really found the Kunwu divine tree, he probably wouldn't have much strength left to subdue it. As he spoke, Lin Sun sat cross-legged and took out some source crystals of the Great Path to recover his physical strength. The old bronze tree could only protect Lin Sun from the power of lightning coming from all directions. However, it didn't need to recover. The Kunwu thunder liquid that it absorbed and refined along the way had already filled it with vitality and made great progress in cultivation. It looked at Lin Sun, who was sitting on one side with his eyes closed, and its expression changed several times. Finally, it sighed in its heart and erased the terrible thought in its mind. After half an hour, Lin Sun opened his eyes from meditation and stood up. The old bronze tree hurriedly said, Taoism Pier, can we continue? Lin Sun nodded. But before they set off, Lin Sun suddenly said, You're very tactful. The inexplicable words made the old bronze tree tremble all over. It reluctantly said, I'm not tactful. I know what I should do and what I shouldn't do. Lin Sun didn't say anything more. His state of mind and willpower had already reached an unprecedented extreme. Just when he was recovering his physical strength, his state of mind had detected several murderous intentions from the old bronze tree beside him. But in the end, the old bronze tree didn't make a move. Hey! Not long after they moved forward, the old bronze tree exclaimed in disbelief, Taoism Pier, I feel a call for help, suspected to be from the Kunwu divine tree. Call for help? Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. This was the forbidden zone of thunder and lightning controlled by Kunwu divine tree, which distributed the power of Kunwu thunder and fire. Here, Kunwu divine tree was like a dominator. Who could threaten it? It's true. Soon, the old bronze tree showed a horrified expression. The Kunwu divine tree's soul is being eroded by a terrible force. Do you know who did it? Lin Sun asked quickly. The old bronze tree was trying to sense it, but found that it had lost the magical connection. He couldn't help but be stunned. Taoism Pier, the Kunwu divine tree is very likely to be in trouble. Its call for help has disappeared. Let's go. Lin Sun took a deep breath and made a decision. No matter who did it, he had to go and have a look. It would be a pity if he missed the opportunity. Taoism Pier, the Kunwu divine tree is in trouble. You can imagine how terrifying the culprit is. The old bronze tree hesitated. Then I'll go by myself, Lin Sun said, and was about to take action. Let's go together. The old bronze tree gritted his teeth and took the lead. Not long after the two moved forward, they saw a huge red thunder pool in the distance. It was 100 feet wide, and the rolling Kunwu thunder liquid was rolling like the tide. In the center of the thunder pool, there was a 3-foot-tall small tree that seemed to be made of fire copper liquid. Its trunk was strong and its branches were like swords. It was rooted in the thunder pool and bathed in the thunder law, looking extremely magical. Kunwu divine tree. There was no doubt that it was one of the 4 great trees born in the chaotic thunder source. However, when he saw this scene, Lin Sun's pupils shrank, revealing a look of astonishment. Because in the middle of the pool of fiery red lightning, there was a bronze divine pot that was suffused with chaotic energy. A blood mosquito was lying on the bronze divine pot as if it was riding on a boat. It avoided the attacks of the lightning pool and arrived in front of the Kunwu divine tree. Its body was as red as blood, as if it was made of divine gold, and it exuded a ghastly chill. Its eyes were like a pair of bloody lanterns, and there were 16 wings on its back. Each pair of wings was branded with dense and strange characters of the underworld, which were ferocious and treacherous. Looking from afar, there was a fierce aura that made people tremble, as if they were looking at a peerless, evil god. Its sharp mouth was inserted into the root of the Kunwu divine tree, and its 16 pairs of wings trembled gently, as if it was absorbing some kind of power. It looked extremely strange. Underworld child? Lin Sun's black pupils shrank, and he almost couldn't believe his eyes. Back then, in the upper 9 realms of the domain of despair, underworld child, this ancient freak that was silent in the Nether River forbidden area, had awakened overnight, and he'd stirred up a storm and revealed a mighty aura that looked down upon all. Lin Sun had fought it more than once, and he knew very well that this fellow's true form was the peerless 8-winged blood mosquito that was born in the Nether River. Such a ferocious being was born and raised by the earth, and it possessed unbelievable ferocity and talent. Moreover, its vitality was strong to the point it was practically undying. Lin Sun had fought it many times, and he'd killed it many times. But every time, Underworld Child relied on the Netherworld Emperor's smelting god pot to come back to life. The last time they met was in the Great Wall of Imperial Pass. At that time, Underworld Child relied on his identity as the legitimate son of the Dark Blood Emperor to bring Lin Sun a lot of trouble. However, Lin Sun still didn't expect that after so many years, he would meet Underworld Child again in the 9th level of the Purgatory of Darkness. This seemed too unbelievable. One had to know that the entrance to the Purgatory of Darkness had always been controlled by Copper Sparrow Pavilion, and ordinary people didn't have the chance to enter at all. Then how did Underworld Child come in? Questions surged in Lin Sun's heart. But immediately Lin Sun felt relaxed. He sensed that Underworld Child's aura hadn't proven his Tao and become an emperor, so it couldn't be said to be a serious threat. But the more it was so, the more curious Lin Sun was. How did this scattered treasure boy, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, sneak into the forbidden area of thunder and lightning and suppress the power of the Kunwu divine tree? Who? Almost immediately, the blood mosquito that was lying in front of the Kunwu divine tree to absorb power turned its head, and then saw Lin Sun in the distance. For a moment, the blood mosquito opened its pair of red lantern-like eyes and was stunned, as if it couldn't believe it. After a while, it called out, "Lin. Soon? Long time no see, scattered wealth boy." Lin Sun waved his hand and smiled brightly. Thinking of all the things in the past, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Was it predestined? Or was it not that enemies didn't meet? "It's really you, bastard." The blood mosquito's figure flashed, and it turned into a devilishly handsome man in a black robe. In the depths of his heart, all kinds of hatred of the past gushed out like a landslide and a tsunami. Suddenly, he looked up to the sky and laughed. "Ha ha, God has eyes, I finally see you. Lin Sun, do you know how much I've missed you all these years?" His voice was full of ferocious, cold, and crazy hatred. Lin Sun was the first opponent to bring him great shame and humiliation, and Lin Sun had repeatedly robbed him of his treasures. Over the years, whenever he thought of these things, he couldn't control the anger and resentment in his heart. However, he didn't expect to meet Lin Sun here. What a coincidence! At this moment, Underworld Child couldn't help but have the same thought as Lin Sun. Was it predestined that Lin Sun would die in his hands today? At this time, the old copper tree was stunned. How could he not see that Lin Sun and Underworld Child were a pair of old enemies with many years of grievances? Perhaps enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road? Chapter 22-27. The pool of lightning surged, and the smelting god pot floated on it like a small boat. "Miss me?" Lin Sun revealed a strange expression and said with a smile, "Could it be that you've collected some good treasures to give to me?" Mingzi suddenly recalled some unbearable and tragic memories, and he was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged. He gnashed his teeth. "You're still sharp-tongued even when you're about to die. Bastard, you're still as rampant as before." Boom! He raised his hand and slapped out. Divine brilliance surged and condensed into a big handprint. It was like a divine mountain that covered the sky, and it pressed down on Lin Sun from a distance. Lin Sun stood there without moving, but the bright and terrifying handprint collapsed with a bang and turned into a rain of light that scattered all over the sky. "After so many years, you've disappointed me more and more." Lin Sun laughed. The disdain in his eyes and the ridicule in his tone stimulated Ming Zi's expression to become gloomy. "You've also come for this Kunwu divine tree?" he suddenly said. Lin Sun nodded, "Yes. Unfortunately, you're a step too late. The soul root of the Kunwu divine tree has been refined by me." Ming Zi took a deep breath and restrained the anger and killing intent in his heart. His expression was cold, "And you're very unfortunate. You'll die here today. You've refined the Kunwu divine tree, so I'll just take it back. As for you saying you'll kill me, haha, if I remember correctly, every time we meet, you seem to be clamoring like this." Lin Sun smiled, "But in the end it seems that you're the one being abused every time." "I swear, you'll die this time." Ming Zi's face darkened. Every word Lin Sun said would uncontrollably remind him of the past. It was simply like a knife stabbing his heart, painful and hateful. Lin Sun's smile became more and more brilliant. He pointed at the smelting god pot under Ming Zi's feet and said, "Don't forget that you've been able to survive many times in the past thanks to this treasure. Without it, you're nothing." "Enough. I'll let you die right now." Ming Zi was so angry that his eyes were scarlet red, and his whole body was surging with tyrannical and monstrous killing intent. He was really angry. New hatred, old hatred, and all kinds of humiliation roared in his heart like an erupting volcano. Boom! The lightning pool churned as Ming Zi rushed over on the smelting god pot. He raised his hand and a silver halberd appeared. When he waved it, endless light swept up. That ray of light was snow-white and peerlessly sharp, and it was like a silver waterfall that was capable of illuminating the sky as it swept down from outer space. Lin Sun's first impression was that the treasures of the Boy of Wealth were indeed rare treasures. While thinking, Lin Sun waved his palm and pressed his fingers together, as if he was holding the sun and the moon. Boom! A world-shaking rumble resounded. The silver halberd was stopped, and it erupted with dazzling light while emitting a buzzing sound. Dark Child's blood boiled, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. However, he wasn't slow at all. An ear-piercing sound rang out, and a mysterious star chart appeared on his body. When the picture rotated, it was like a starry sky. Countless stars flowed out like waves of starlight, turning into a whirlpool and shrouding Lin Sun. Myriad starry sky diagram. The terrible power of devouring and crushing seemed to come from a black hole in the starry sky, distorting and collapsing the void. The terrible power could simply destroy everything. The old bronze tree was also a fierce soul of the Emperor realm. When it witnessed this scene, it couldn't help but be horrified. This was obviously a tyrannical and unparalleled primordial treasure. In an instant, Lin Sun was subjected to an unparalleled force of imprisonment and suppression. He was like a grain falling into a millstone, and it seemed that he would be crushed at any time. However, as he ran his cultivation, he broke free from the imprisonment and smashed the suppression with a flick of his sleeve. He stretched out his arm and grabbed the starry sky picture that was shrouding him. This treasure was even more wonderful than the silver halberd, and its quality was extremely extraordinary. Lin Sun couldn't help but be tempted. You still want to snatch the treasure when you're about to die? Mingzi was so angry that he laughed. How could Lin Sun still regard him as the boy of treasure scattering at this time? What a lunatic! His whole body surged with divine brilliance, forming a colorful halo, like a bright wheel, surrounding and protecting his figure. Boom! The heavens fell and the earth cracked. While activating the silver halberd and the starry sky picture to kill, Mingzi took out a green jade gourd filled with chaotic air. From the mouth of the gourd, a gorgeous divine light poured out. It was like a great river covering the sky and earth, turning into tens of thousands of spirits that filled the sky. At this moment, not only Lin Sun, but the old bronze tree also gasped in shock. The scene was too shocking. Tens of thousands of creatures covered the sky and the earth, and they were everywhere. There was a golden divine sparrow that flapped its wings in the void and cried to the sky. There was a ferocious bird that was like a dark cloud that cast a large shadow on the ground. Its eyes were as big and scarlet as a lake. There was a bash that was shaped like a python. Its body coiled in the void, and it was so huge that it was about to swallow the sun and the moon. There was a giant green elephant that was as big as a mountain. It was extremely powerful, and its roar cracked the void. There was also a terrifying golden rock that flew straight up with its wings like the clouds in the sky, and it was about to shoot down the stars. In a trance, it was as if they had returned to the beginning of the primeval times, when tens of thousands of spirits came out together to fight above the heavens. Those figures were densely packed, and they were all so huge that they seemed to cover the earth and the boundless starry sky. They were all the most powerful creatures. All of this was transformed by the divine light that came out of the green jade gourd. One gourd turned into tens of thousands of spirits, and it was incomparably magical. What a treasure! A peerless treasure! The same thought emerged in the minds of Lin Sun and the old bronze tree at the same time. As long as they were not fools, they could see how amazing the green jade gourd was. Boom! The world shook as tens of thousands of spirits came out to kill Lin Sun. It was as if the gods were coming out. Lin Sun, let's see what you can use to fight me. A cold light flashed in Mingzi's eyes. This was the Origin Spirit Gourd. It contained the chaotic chi that could transform tens of thousands of spirit. At the beginning of the primeval times, this treasure was ranked as the 63rd Emperor weapon of all heavens. If it was used by the Emperor Ancestor, a gourd could break a starry sky and crush a big world. It could be said that Mingzi was extremely confident in this treasure. The scene was turbulent, and Lin Sun's figure was soon submerged. Monstrous spirits rushed out and released boundless ferocious power. The old bronze tree felt like his heart was about to explode, and his heart was filled with sorrow. Were all the young people nowadays so fierce? Lin Sun's combat strength was heaven-defying, and he could surpass the heavenly chasm to kill an emperor. And this Ming Zi had not become an emperor yet, but he had a heaven-defying emperor weapon. Its power was so great that it could make an emperor feel despair. This was simply maddening. Old thing, you are with that Lin Sun. I can tell at a glance that you are not a good person. Go to hell. Ming Zi suddenly looked at the old bronze tree with surging killing intent. As he spoke, he waved his sleeve, and a group of magnificent flying swords whizzed out. There were a total of 36 swords, each 4 inches long and 2 fingers wide. They were crystal clear and branded with emperor treasure marks. It was a group of emperor weapon flying swords. The old bronze tree was so shocked that his whole body trembled. He ran away madly while cursing in his heart. Others loved the house and its crow, but this kid was the opposite. However, that group of flying swords was truly extraordinary. The old bronze tree felt very ashamed to suddenly have such a thought at such a dangerous moment. However, this feeling of envy and jealousy could not be stopped. There was no other way. Who made those treasures to be so tempting? The old bronze tree dared to swear that if any other emperor was here, they would definitely have the same thought as him. They would definitely want to skin this Ming Zi alive to see how many treasures they could take from him. The flying swords flew about, forming a sword formation to attack. The emperor's might was like a tide. In the blink of an eye, it was unknown how many of the old copper tree's dense branches were cut off. It was in so much pain that it cried out "Ao Ao," shocked and scared. He was an emperor realm vile soul. But in the face of the group of emperor swords, he could not resist at all. Old thing, don't run. Ming Zi sneered as he looked at the old bronze tree that was running around. He felt a sense of comfort. This resentment had accumulated in his heart for many years, and he finally had the chance to vent it. There was only one word to describe this feeling: exhilarating. Seeing that the old bronze tree was about to be unable to resist, Lin Sun's voice suddenly sounded in the field. These treasures are really good. It was like a diner praising the chef's craftsmanship from the bottom of his heart. It was full of enthusiasm, like an appraiser who was not stingy with his comments about treasures. But the meaning of these words made Ming Zi's heart skip a beat. Not good. Before he could react, he saw that in the battlefield of the thousands of spirits, a pagoda appeared in the sky. It had the power to suppress the past and the present, and it whistled towards the origin spirit gourd in the void. The Great Way has no end pagoda. At the same time, a bright and golden rope swept out like a swift bolt of lightning and coiled around the myriad starry sky diagram. The treasure-binding golden rope. This was not the end. Lin Sun's figure also rushed out. Wherever he passed, he smashed through the shadows of the spirits and grabbed at the silver halberd in Lin Sun's hand. This series of actions was almost done in one go. At the same time, he stared at the 3 treasures that Ming Zi had taken out. Such a scene caught Ming Zi off guard. He immediately roared, "Surnamed Lin, you are King greedy. Insatiable?" The use of this word was too mysterious. It seemed to be blaming him. It was fine if you snatched 1 treasure, but you wanted to snatch 3 at once. Aren't you afraid of being stuffed to death? Boom! Bursts of roars resounded in the forbidden area of thunder and lightning. The terrifying light of treasures spread, and a scene of destruction appeared. First, the starry sky atlas couldn't hold on any longer. It was entangled and imprisoned by the golden rope. Like prey entangled by a python, it fell from the void. Following a fierce collision, the silver halberd in Ming Zi's hand was grabbed by Lin Sun and forcibly taken away. Ming Zi was shaken to the point that his qi and blood rolled, and he coughed up blood. But he couldn't care about this. He used all his strength to control the origin spirit gourd to fight against the Tower of Endless Way. This treasure was too precious. It was not easy for him to collect it not long ago. If it was taken away, the loss would be too great. Open! Open for me. His eyes were scarlet and he roared. The aura all over his body spread like a landslide and a tsunami. He almost exhausted all his strength. But gradually Ming-Zi despaired. A supreme treasure like the Origin Spirit Gourd was firmly suppressed at the moment. No matter how it struggled, it was useless. Chapter 22-28. Bang! An earth-shattering crash resounded. The Gourd of Origin trembled violently and was directly suppressed into the Tower of Endless Tao. Seeing this happen, Ming Child's face completely darkened. Before, Ming Child had never felt so good before. At this moment, Ming Child felt unprecedentedly unhappy. His face was gloomy and he was almost flustered and exasperated. His 7 orifices were fuming, and he couldn't help coughing up a mouthful of blood. Xian Shang Halberd, Starry Sky Atlas, Gourd of Origin, they were all taken away. All of them. Ming Child couldn't help but recall the tragic scenes he had experienced in the past. His heart trembled, and his teeth were almost crushed by hatred. Lin Sun, Ming Child suddenly raised his head and stared at Lin Sun with scarlet eyes. He opened his mouth and was about to say something, but Lin Sun's figure suddenly disappeared and swept towards the distant old copper tree. Ming Child was stunned for a moment, and then he realized what Lin Sun was going to do. This guy actually wanted to take the opportunity to collect the 36 deadly swords. Puff! Ming Child felt suffocated in his chest, and a mouthful of blood that was held in his throat finally spurted out. This was too much. However, when he was about to resist, Lin Sun activated the lifeless seal and smashed it randomly. The 36 Emperor swords fell from the void like fishes that had been smashed. Lin Sun collected all of them. Ming Child, who suffered from the backfire, trembled all over and his face turned pale. "Are you all right?" Lin Sun asked the old copper tree. The old copper tree's expression was one of joy after surviving a disaster. His expression was complicated as he said, "These treasures are really powerful. Fortunately, you took them. Otherwise, my old bones would have been smashed to pieces. Anyway, I still have to congratulate you. These are really good treasures." In the end, there was a trace of irrepressible envy and covetousness in his voice. Lin Sun collected these flying swords and looked at Ming Child in the distance with a smile. "This is all thanks to the Boy of Wealth. If it wasn't for him, how could we see such wonderful treasures?" The old copper tree nodded repeatedly. The Boy of Wealth? It was really appropriate. Hearing the conversation between the man and the tree, Name felt a rush of blood to his head, and couldn't help but want to cough blood again. He hastily took a deep breath and suppressed his raging and resentful emotions. He gritted his teeth and said word by word, "Surnamed Lin, you're dead meat this time. No one in the world can save you." His long hair fluttered madly, and his eyes almost split apart from rage. His voice shook the heavens and the earth. Boom! The god refinement pot glowed beneath his feet, and it emanated a strand of a strange and obscure fluctuation. It seemed like countless laws of order had faintly appeared and coiled around the nether child. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. He rushed forward and activated the lifeless seal to kill. A strange scene appeared. The lifeless seal was an extremely powerful Kunlun Emperor weapon, but before it could even get close, it was forced back by the power of the law of order released by the smelting god pot. Buzz! The lifeless seal staggered and almost lost control, which made Lin Sun's blood boil. "This is his most powerful treasure." The old copper tree shrieked. Lin Sun said angrily, "Nonsense. The origin of this smelting god pot was extremely mysterious. In the past, Lin Sun thought that he had killed the Dark Child, but every time, he was saved by the smelting god pot. It was incomparably miraculous and unbelievable. It was no exaggeration to say that if it weren't for the smelting god pot, the Nether Child, who had many treasures, would have been killed many times." At this time, Lin Sun's expression gradually became dignified. In the distance, the Nether Child was obviously activating a secret skill, which made the smelting god pot seem to wake up from the silence of the ages. The aura it emitted was as obscure and mysterious as the Great Way, and it was extremely terrifying. Without hesitation, Lin soon attacked again, but no matter what treasure he used, he couldn't shake the power of the smelting god pot for a while. Surnamed Lin, aren't you very strong? Come on, come and kill me! The Nether Child's expression was cold, and his eyes were burning with raging hatred. The aura of the smelting god pot was getting stronger, as if it was communicating with something. Fellow Taoist, what should we do? The old copper tree had a bad premonition, and he was horrified as if a great calamity would descend in the next moment. Lin Sun frowned and said nothing. The Nether Child was nothing to be afraid of, but the smelting god pot was too strange, and it made him feel a strong sense of danger. Ha ha, you two idiots! Don't you think about it? Even Emperor Realm cultivators will suffer in this damned place, and how did I get here? The Nether Child laughed with a ghastly tone. This was indeed what puzzled Lin Sun. The entrance to the Purgatory of Darkness had always been controlled by the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, so how could they casually let a trash like the Nether Child in? Moreover, the Nether Child hadn't become an emperor, so his combat strength was limited. If it wasn't for the smelting god pot, not to mention the 9th level, it would probably be difficult for him to even enter the 6th level. It's normal that you can't figure it out. There are many things in this world that you don't know. The Nether Child's eyes were gloomy, and his expression had recovered its calmness and composure. He even had a sense of superiority when facing Lin Sun. I know you're deliberately stalling for time. Otherwise, with your hatred for me, if you had the chance to kill me, you wouldn't talk so much nonsense. Lin Sun said indifferently, Old Copper Tree, let's go. Anyway, we've obtained a lot of good treasures on this trip. It's not a loss. With that, he turned around and left. The old Copper Tree hurriedly followed. In the situation where he couldn't figure out the situation, Lin Sun planned to hide for the time being. The Nether Child was nothing to worry about, but the smelting god pot was too strange. The Nether Child immediately sneered. You still want to leave at this time? It's too late. His voice fell. Boom. The entire 9th level of the Purgatory of Darkness suddenly trembled violently, as if there was an extremely terrifying existence below the 9th level that was about to rush out. In fact, at this moment, the 18 levels of the Purgatory of Darkness were all trembling. A cold and terrifying will, like a god entrenched in the deepest part of the Purgatory, awakened from the lowest level and rushed all the way to the 17th level, the 16th level, the 15th level. Along the way, it caused a great earthquake in every level of the world. No one knew how many ferocious souls entrenched in it were awakened, and then they trembled in fear. When this scene happened, the drunkard and Goldie, who were standing outside the Purgatory of Darkness, showed a shocked expression. They looked at each other and noticed that a shocking change had happened. It's the guy suppressed in the 18th level. As soon as the drunkard said this, Goldie had already disappeared into the Purgatory of Darkness. Every time this old dog senses an opportunity to fight, it's so impatient as if it's in heat. The drunkard muttered to himself as he rushed in as well. The upper 9 levels of the Purgatory of Darkness couldn't accommodate existences like them, but if they entered the lower 9 levels, there would be no problem. The 18th level. Is it that person? Qin Ying stayed alone with a touch of surprise in his starry eyes. According to the ancient records, in the 18th level of the Purgatory of Darkness, there was only one will power left by a powerful figure in ancient times. It was the most terrifying existence in the Purgatory of Darkness. Since the end of the Calamity of Oblivion until now, the 18th level was simply a restricted area, and it caused countless people to not dare trespass into it. According to Qin Ying's knowledge, since the ancient times until now, only the Deer Formation Emperor and the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion's master had entered that restricted area. When the Deer Formation Emperor returned, he said, It's admirable to be obsessed with the Tao. After the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion's master returned all those years ago, he didn't say a single word, and he only gave a single order. No one was allowed to take a step closer to the 18th level. With young Master Lin's current strength, even though he possesses the might of the Slaughter Emperor, he's only able to enter the 9th level. No matter what, he doesn't have the chance to offend that existence in the 18th level. Qi Ying was surprised and bewildered in her heart. She expected that some sort of shocking change had probably occurred in the 9th level of the Purgatory of Darkness. The Purgatory of Darkness. An illusory figure took a single step from the 14th level to easily enter the 13th level, and from the beginning until the end, it was as if he was walking on flat ground. However, everywhere he passed, countless terrifying living beings shivered, and they were terrified and uneasy. This figure was dressed in plain clothes, and his white hair fluttered in the wind. His figure was extremely thin, and his appearance was blurry, illusory and blurry. The 12th level, the 11th level. With each step he took, he crossed a world. His demeanor was calm, but his speed was shocking. He wasn't afraid of the suppression and restraints of the Purgatory of Darkness. When he arrived at the 10th level, just as he was about to take another step, he suddenly stopped. At the spur of the moment, a big yellow dog dashed out from the void and blocked the way. It really is you, Zhu Kong. You're the only one who could create such a huge commotion. Back then, my master respected you for your courage, and that's why he didn't kill you. Why did you break the rules? Big Yellow was alert. It was no longer as arrogant as it used to be, and it was replaced with a grave look. Break the rules? No, I'm just going to save an old friend. You better step aside, or else I won't be polite. The plain-clothed man spoke. His voice was as sharp as a knife and as emotionless as a sword. His figure was thin, yet when he spoke, he was like a supreme god that revealed an indisputable and inviolable aura. If it was any other Emperor Realm figure, that person would have probably been terrified and directly knelt down a long time ago. But Big Yellow was Big Yellow after all. It was the Big Yellow that had once pursued one of the 3 peerless assassins, the Skanda Buddhist master, to the point he had no choice but to flee in a sorry state. At this moment, he took a deep breath and revealed his ghastly white teeth as he said coldly, "An old friend? The Purgatory of Darkness has always been controlled by my Copper Sparrow Pavilion. How could I not know that an old friend of yours, Zhu Kong, has come to the Purgatory of Darkness?" The fur on his body flowed with a misty rain of light while his imposing aura was ferocious and overbearing. He was like a primeval ferocious beast that resided there, and he was similarly extremely terrifying. The Purgatory of Darkness was formed from the first tribulation of oblivion, and it was just forcefully occupied by your master. You don't understand the profundities behind this. Moreover, just you alone can't stop me. As he spoke, the plain-clothed man had already raised his foot with the intention of leaving. What if I'm included? Space roiled as the drunkard's figure floated up into appearance. At this moment, his drowsy and intoxicated eyes had become bright like stars and sharp like swords. His clothes fluttered as he stood by Big Yellow's side.